Chapter 1061. I've already figured out the Tao of Providence, and even the Tao of Destiny. Knowing what was going on and how it worked, Liu could also use his origin of order to manifest the power of destiny. The Tao of Destiny in this world is in the hands of the river diagram. It's enough for me to know what the power of destiny is. There's no need for me to wrestle with the river diagram. In this world, the ultimate goal of mastering the laws of heaven and earth was to perfect the chaos and disorder. It was already possible to transform the basic laws into the chaos and disorder. However, the connate five virtues, karma, destiny, life and death, destruction and end, calamity and calamity, illusion and nothingness, and other mysterious laws had to be mastered before they could be transformed into the chaos and disorder. Therefore, my current mission is to improve my clone as soon as possible and reach Tao integration as soon as possible. Only when I reach Tao integration can I completely come into contact with the 3,000 great Tao of this world. His clone had to make use of the time to cultivate. His main body had to do what he had to do. In many worlds, there's something called a list. Liu smiled as he looked at Yu Tian. A sinister smile appeared on his face. I also created a list in this world. It seems quite interesting. He reached out and grabbed, and a floating meteorite fell into Liu's hand. With a brush of the Xianwang Qi, the material transformed into a huge obelisk. Heavenly obelisk. With a brush of the power of order, the heavenly obelisk was engraved with the ranking rules. Immortal ranking, Grandmaster ranking, Genius ranking. The immortal ranking includes all cultivators from the Essence Soul to the Yang Soul. Sky Immortals are not included. They are ranked by combat strength. The Grandmaster ranking includes all Jin Dan Grandmasters. Jin Dan and above Yin Soul cultivators are not included. They are also ranked by combat strength. The Genius ranking includes all cultivators in the Qi channeling stage and is ranked by combat strength. Spirit Soul cultivators above the Qi channeling stage are also not included. Sky Immortals were not included in the Immortal ranking mainly because there were only a few of them in the world. There was no need to create a separate ranking. Yin gods were not listed on the master board because they had all gone out to travel the greater world in search of opportunities to advance to the primordial spirit stage. No one cared about the board. The same principle applied to divine souls. When a divine soul cultivator sought out a lucky chance to reach the Jin Dan, they similarly didn't care about some ranking list. Naturally, this was the only way to achieve the effect of the rankings. Here comes the fun. Take a look at this cultivation world. Are all the cultivators wholeheartedly focused on cultivation and don't care about fame and fortune? With a wave of his hand, the gigantic heaven-reaching steel transformed into a streak of light and fell into Yu Tian. Boom! The rainbow streaked across the sky, exploding with a heaven-shaking explosion. In the 100,000 mountain range between the southern wasteland and the western wasteland, a bright rainbow fell to the ground like a shooting star and let out a loud boom. A dazzling radiance soared into the sky, shaking heaven and earth. Boom! 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 3 streaks of light shot up into the sky, forming 3 huge golden lists in the sky. Immortal ranking, Grandmaster ranking, Genius ranking. On the huge list, dazzling names appeared one after another. In an instant, the world was shaken. What's going on? Tianji City has a Tianji ranking, and now there are 3 lists. Damn it! Even the primordial spirit and sun spirit are on the list. Old geezer Tianji, you're courting death. All the major sects flew into a rage. The sect's background was revealed to the world without any secrets. How could this be? Only the old geezer Tianji's Dharma treasure, the Tianji compass, had such a function. It must have been the old geezer Tianji who created it. Therefore, the experts from the various sects came to Tianji City aggressively to settle the score with Tianji Elder. I'm innocent. I'm innocent. It's not me. It's really not me. Tianji Elder's face turned pale when the primordial spirit experts from the various sects came knocking on his door. It's really not me. In order to prove his innocence, the elder of heavenly secrets, simply took out the heavenly secrets compass for everyone to examine. It's really not the old geezer Tianji? Therefore, the group of primordial spirit experts hurried to the 100,000 mountain range and arrived at the heaven-reaching steel. Once this list is out, the world will be in trouble. Peng Lai's sect's primordial spirit venerable, Jiang Yehe, looked at the heaven-reaching steel and shook his head. For cultivators who live a simple life, once involved in the battle for fame and fortune, it will be very detrimental to their temperament. The group of primordial spirit venerable quickly came to a consensus that this heaven-reaching steel must be destroyed. Boom, boom, boom. Spell after spell and Dharma treasure after Dharma treasure violently smashed against the heaven-reaching steel. However, more than 10 primordial spirit venerable joined forces, but they could not even leave a mark on this heaven-reaching steel. It was obvious that this heaven-reaching steel was not something that primordial spirit cultivators could shake. Unable to break it, unable to smash it, the crowd had no choice but to leave helplessly. Ancestral Master, what's up with that heaven-reaching steel? Su Zhifei secretly smashed the heaven-reaching steel once, but it was not damaged at all. He hurried back to Peng Lai and asked Li Yu, who had already returned from the world of the seven immortals. No matter. How should Li Yu answer? Should he tell him that this was caused by the Ancestral Master? Naturally, he could only give a vague answer. All right. If the Ancestral Master said no matter, then it could only be no matter. Su Zhifei could only leave helplessly. So, in the early autumn, strange stones fell from the sky and turned into the heaven-reaching steel. The 3 lists were displayed, shocking the world. Number 1 on the genius list, Dubai from Yingzhou. Dubai, what are you capable of? How can you be number 1 on the genius list? I want to challenge you. Once the 3 lists were released, the first to cause a commotion was the genius list. Cultivators in the Qi channeling stage were all young people. Young people had high aspirations. How could they bear to be suppressed by others? Therefore, before Dubai could figure out the situation, a group of disciples from Yingzhou came to challenge him. Things like this were happening everywhere. Xian from Peng Lai did not escape either. Xian, you're number 3 on the genius list? You're the last person in the sect tournament. What are you capable of? What are you capable of being number 3? Fight! They fought fiercely. Rogue Cultivator Pan, Yun Qi defeated Wind Sword, Lu Ji, number 1 on the genius list, and officially entered the genius list. A few days later, the changes in the genius list made all the self-proclaimed geniuses in the world unable to sit still any longer. So you can enter the list by defeating someone on the list. This situation made the already fiery challenge trend even more fiery. Not bad. This experiment can be considered success. Li Yu did not fiddle with the list simply for fun. He was testing his own ideas. As expected, being on the list is gaining fame and popularity. Fame and popularity are the general trend. Naturally, it can increase one's luck. Li Yu felt that this experiment was necessary to observe the changes in the luck of the people on the list. That was how one's luck was created. Chapter 1062. This ranking list can increase one's providence? As time passed, the hidden effect of the ranking list was discovered by the elites of the various sections. This was because the chances of the disciples on the ranking list obtaining fortuitous encounters had greatly increased. All of them became exuberant, and their fortunes were flourishing. Their cultivation had also become smoother. The Skirich steel is a treasure of providence. We have to take this seriously. The battle for providence was also a battle for cultivation. If the disciples' providence was flourishing, the sect's providence would be flourishing as well. Hence, the various sect members who initially rejected the ranking list became very supportive. The various sects opened up arenas for the cultivators on the ranking list to challenge. The ranking list challenge became a grand event in the cultivation world. However, the Nether sect could not participate. Why can't we participate? We're cultivators too. You're gods, not cultivators. The seal of Samsara's cold reminder rendered the Emperor Yama speechless. In truth, their power came from the imperial edict. Not only were they not cultivators, but they were not even divine path cultivators. The nether sect that was in the fire pit could only work as deities of the underworld without complaint. Dubai, this battle concerns the sect's glory. You must give it your all. On this day, the Ing province sect welcomed a peak battle. Dubai, the first on the genius ranking, was going to fight the second on the genius ranking, the Luo Fu sect's galaxy sword, Ing Juexiao. Ing Juexiao was more than 10 years older than Dubai. He had been at the peak of the Qi channeling stage for many years. His galaxy sword technique was extraordinary. However, with such strength, he was still ranked second. This made Ing Juexiao very unhappy. This battle was Ing Juexiao's battle to prove his name. Dubai, let's fight. Ing Juexiao stood in the arena. The long sword in his hand that was swirling with starlight vibrated slightly, and a sword energy shot out. Boom! The sword energy shot into the sky and exploded with a loud boom. Sword energy, thunder. Sword energy, thunder. Seeing the sword light that soared into the sky and hearing the thunderous explosion, the countless cultivators watching the battle let out a burst of shocked cries. Thunderous sword energy. This was a realm of swordsmanship that many divine soul experts were unable to reach. Ing Juexiao had actually mastered the sword Qi thunderous technique. No wonder he dared to challenge Dubai. It turned out that they had come prepared. This time, Dubai's title of number 1 on the genius ranking would be lost. A cultivator who was defeated in a challenge would inevitably suffer a great fall in their reputation and popularity. Naturally, his luck had also plummeted. Fame is just an external object. One's own body is the foundation. Dubai, don't feel burdened. Just fight with all your might. As Dubai's master, Fairy Mingqin was one of the few Jin Dan grandmasters who did not care about fame or fortune. In her opinion, no matter how great one's karmic luck was, wouldn't one still have to rely on oneself to cultivate? He couldn't neglect the essentials. In fact, Fairy Mingqin's view was correct. Luck was just icing on the cake. One's own cultivation was the foundation. However, cultivators on the genius ranking had a great increase in karmic luck and endless fortuitous encounters. This caused many sect, family clans, and cultivators themselves to be very concerned about karmic luck. Wielding a sword under the heavens, one's name was illustrious. Furthermore, one's karmic luck would greatly increase. One naturally could not let go of such a good opportunity. This disciple understands. Dubai was naturally very grateful for Fairy Mingqin's concern. Only the heart and only the self. Whether it is karmic luck or reputation, they are all external objects. I have long since stopped being limited by external objects. How can I be burdened by reputation? Dubai's cold face was expressionless. He did not care about other people's discussions, nor did he care about the encouragement of his fellow sect members. Pressing the moonlight sword, he walked onto the stage unhurriedly. Dubai, it hasn't even been 10 years since you reached the Qi drawing realm. As for me, I have already been in the Qi drawing realm for 30 years. My cultivation is 1, and I have also mastered thunderous sword Qi. What will you use to fight me? As soon as he stepped onto the stage, Ing Juexiao used a psychological attack to attack Dubai's confidence. Cultivation level has nothing to do with cultivation time. You have been in the Qi drawing realm for 30 years, yet you have not reached the godly soul stage. You are still ranked below me. This can only mean that you are not good enough. How could Dubai not understand the psychological attack? He immediately retorted sarcastically, attacking Ing Juexiao's vital point. You're just showing off. Ing Juexiao snorted coldly and raised the Xinghe sword in his hand. I wonder if your sword is as powerful as your tongue? Won't you know if you try? Dubai expressionlessly raised the moonlight sword. Senior apprentice brother Ing, please. Watch this. Ing Juexiao swung his long sword. Hazy starlight swirled around the Xinghe sword. Ethereal sword song. The sword light was like a drizzle, endless. Waves of ethereal, celestial music rang out, from the sword light. The celestial music was graceful and enchanting. However, this seemingly ethereal and soft sword light was as swift as thunder, as fast as lightning. The sword rain was hazy and suddenly enveloped the entire stage. Good. As expected of the Shingha sword, the ethereal sword song is indeed unparalleled. Seeing this sword, the spectating practitioners instantly cheered loudly. Even the Jindan experts of the Yingzhou and Luofu sects nodded their heads in admiration of Ying Juexiao's sword. To be able to cultivate sword techniques to such a level in the Qi Gatherer stage, the Luofu sword cultivators were indeed extraordinary. Ethereal sword of stars. So many tricks. You have to know that it only takes one sword to kill someone. A white light flashed across Du Bai's eyes. He swung the moonlight sword in his hand and slashed down. A straight slash, straight and direct, without any fancy moves. With just one slash, a ray of moonlight rushed up like a crescent moon. The ethereal starlight and the hazy sword rain were instantly split apart by this ray of moonlight. Boom! The sword light flashed, and then a roar sounded. Sword aura, thunderous sound. Du Bai has also mastered the sword aura, thunderous sound. Seeing the power of this sword, the crowd cried out in shock. No wonder Du Bai of the Ying Zhou prodigy ranking first. He had reached the Qi Gatherer stage less than 10 years ago, but he had already mastered the sword aura, thunderous sound technique. Good. Ying Juexiao's reputation was not undeserved. When the ethereal sword rain was split apart by the moonlight, rays of starlight burst out from the Shingha sword. Stars appeared in the light of the sword, as if the stars in the sky had fallen into the mortal world and appeared on the platform. The river of stars flowed, and the vast starry sky swept out. This sword strike no longer had a soft and ethereal feeling. Instead, it had turned into a violent and crushing force. Clang, clang, clang. The moonlight and starlight intertwined. For a moment, the moon and the stars shone together. The entire platform was dazzling. A fierce battle between a dragon and a tiger. A fierce battle between a dragon and a tiger. The battle between the first and second on the prodigy ranking is indeed extraordinary. Such peerless sword techniques. No wonder they're the first and second on the prodigy ranking. The spectators saw the scene of the moon and stars intertwining on the platform and were instantly amazed. I didn't expect your sword techniques to be so extraordinary. I still have one more sword technique. Take my sword. Falling stars like rain. The sword light trembled, and stars fell from the sky with bright flames behind them, smashing fiercely toward Du Bai. Roar! Suddenly, a loud roar resounded, and monstrous flames surged up. A huge fire dragon rushed out and fiercely collided with Ying Juexiao. Boom! With a loud explosion, the violent shock wave sent Ying Juexiao flying out of the platform. Ying Juexiao's face was full of shock and anger. How could you use spells in a sword competition? Senior brother Ying, I'm not a sword cultivator. Du Bai spread his hands. Yes, Ying Juexiao was a sword cultivator, but Du Bai was not. Spells were Du Bai's forte, right? He was not a sword cultivator, but he had mastered the sword aura thunderous sound. No wonder he was the first on the prodigy ranking. He deserved it. His popularity and providence had greatly increased. Chapter 1063. The Jin Dan and the Essence Soul are much more stable. Of all the ranking battles in the entire cultivation world, only the Qi Gatherer stage genius ranking had intense competition. Almost no one challenged the Grandmaster and Immortal rankings. Let's not talk about Immortal Soul experts first. Even the Jin Dan Grandmaster rankings. Those who had formed a superior grade Jin Dan had a pure and flawless Tao heart. It was impossible for them to fight for fame. As for the middle grade Jin Dan and inferior grade Jin Dan, although they wanted a challenge, they didn't even have the qualifications to be on the rankings. The difference between a Dan and a higher grade was like heaven and earth. No middle grade or inferior grade Jin Dan dared to challenge a superior grade Jin Dan. However, my experiment is basically complete. I've verified everything that needs to be verified. After experimenting with the Tao of Providence in this world and deepening his understanding of providence, Liu couldn't be bothered with the rankings. In addition to providence and fame, this ranking is also a tempering of one's heart. Losers can temper their hearts. Winners can also test their hearts. Let's see if they can maintain their Tao heart in the face of glory. Therefore, Big Boss Lee was tired of playing with him again. There's a guy called Tao Ancestor Nirvana who wants to step into the third step of Tao integration. He needs to combine the Tao of Yin and Yang. He and Shi Xian will definitely have a Tao competition. Liu looked up at the sky and shook his head with a smile. Don't be nervous. You're just a boss on Shi Xian's path. I won't do anything. After Tao Ancestor Nirvana killed Qin Yunzi, he calculated that no one in this world could cultivate the Tao of Yin and Yang. Therefore, he stopped paying attention to Yu Yutian. And then, he was played until he was crippled. A golden immortal Tao ancestor can't even calculate a small cultivator related to his Tao. Who would believe that the Yu Daoran didn't do anything? Liu shook his head. I don't need to care about these trivial matters. Next, my avatar should cultivate. My main body can make a trip to the primordial chaos. There was a special place in this void universe. This place was a region in the void universe that had not yet completed its final evolution. The laws of heaven and earth were in a state of chaos. Earth, water, fire, and wind were wreaking havoc everywhere, as well as raging energy storms and black holes of various sizes. Of course, there were also all sorts of half-completed laws of heaven and earth. The chaotic great wilderness also had countless lands and starry skies, and all sorts of great wilderness beasts lived there. For example, the nine-eared phoenix, torch dragon, Ing Zhao, six-eared macaque, Dijiang, Fei, and many others. In essence, these primitive exotic beasts were the first batch of living creatures after the birth of the void universe. Compared to the sky devils, who had grown crooked, the prehistorical beasts in the chaotic prehistorical era didn't grow crooked. They were just not fully grown yet. They had divine abilities, magic power, and innate power of the great Tao, but they did not have brains. Primordial beasts had no intelligence and were no different from ordinary wild beasts. Although heaven immortals and even half-step gold immortals were everywhere, it was extremely rare for them to possess intelligence. There's a primordial chaos hidden mysterious vine. It gained sentience and advanced to the half-step golden immortal realm. With the primordial chaos hidden mysterious vine as the foundation, it created the Nanine Great World and established the Great Void Sect. It called itself the Hidden Daozi. If one didn't become a golden immortal, one would be a pawn in the struggle for the Great Tao. The Hidden Daozi was also a pawn. Of course, Liu wasn't interested in being a pawn or not. However, Liu is still very interested in the Hidden Daozi's Tao of Dreams. I've seen the celestial venerate of Mirage's Tao of Illusions, and I'm also interested in the Tao of Dreams of this world. Qian Daozi, I'll observe you for a while. Just think of it as admiring flowers. Liu's main body stood up and took a step forward. Ignoring the distance between them, he instantly arrived in the chaotic great wilderness. It really is the chaotic great wilderness. How chaotic! Earth, water, fire, and wind surged, and energy storms wreaked havoc. All sorts of incomplete Tao laws stirred between heaven and earth. Black holes appeared one after another, and cracks appeared in the void. Those below the heavenly immortal realm won't be able to survive unless they find a peaceful place. Liu raised his eyes and looked ahead. There was a peaceful area there. It was a land floating in the middle of an energy storm, like a small boat floating in the middle of a raging sea. Are you hiding here, Hidden Daozi? On that piece of land, Liu saw an ordinary vine wrapped around a huge tree. You've turned yourself into an ordinary vine and don't reveal any spirit energy. You're hiding from disaster. The Tao of Dreams of the Hidden Chaos Vine was the key to the ancestral dragon's daughter, Aoli. That was why the Hidden Daozi had to hide his true body and reveal himself as a dreamscape. The only reason you dare to reveal yourself as a dreamscape is because Tao Ancestor 5 Elements, Kong Ji, is helping you conceal the heavenly secrets. Otherwise, you wouldn't be so bold. Liu smiled and walked to the side of the vines without making a sound. The chaos was formless and traceless, so the hidden Daozi couldn't sense that someone was spying on him. You're just a vine. Of course you can't count as spying. Liu smiled as he looked at this vine. In his eyes, the primal chaos, hidden mysterious vine had already revealed its true appearance. It was an immortal vine with a hint of darkness in its green color. It was enormous, and its vines coiled around it, forming a major world. It was a dreamscape called the Hidden South World. There was no sun, moon, or stars in this dreamscape, only glowing green leaves. The green leaves were the land. Some were like that small island, only a few kilometers in circumference. Some were like continents, spanning millions of kilometers. Some were barren and desolate. Some were full of life, some burned with flames, and some rippled with water. There were also creatures living on these leaves. There were humans, plants, and all sorts of beasts. There were about 2,700 leaves, and each of them carried a slight trace of the Great Tao. I want to manifest the 3,000 Great Taos. Perfect the dreamscape, merge with the Tao of dreams, and become a golden immortal? Too bad I'm still far from it. Liu looked at the vine and carefully observed the Tao of dreams contained within. Starting from the dreamscape of all living beings, to comprehend the power of dreams. From there, I'll understand the principles of illusion, reality, and illusion, merge with the Tao of dreams, and finally attain the grand void, becoming a Tao unification golden immortal. This path was very interesting. The Tao of dreams, the power of dreams of all living beings. This thing was somewhat similar to the divine Tao cultivation technique of becoming a god through incense. Similarly, it gathered the power of thoughts of all living beings. However, the Tao of dreams did not require faith or incense offerings. It only needed to be able to dream. As expected, I need to learn from many sources to comprehend by analogy. Liu nodded with a smile. Seeing the Tao of dreams had opened his mind. If the power of dreams could be gathered, then what about fear, greed, jealousy, hatred? The powers of the 7 emotions and 6 desires could all be gathered in the same way. The so-called 7 deadly sins, the so-called demons, or the mental demons, can be cultivated through this method. It could also create a series of demonic Tao. Of course, righteousness, compassion, courage, honesty, protection, and so on. These positive emotions could also be created. This is the Tao of mental demons? Haha, how interesting. Chapter 1064. This world really did have the Tao of the mental demon. The primordial chaos golden dipper's Tao of doom and the Tao of the mental demon were 2 sides of the same coin. The grand beginning fiend ancestor's great Tao of evil also contained the mental demon. You inner demons are only half-step golden immortals. You don't even have a mental demon dermic formulation that is compatible with the postnatal Tao. Liu was about to stir up trouble again with his playful heart. Yu Yuqian also has a fellow named Fairy 7 Emotions. Although she's only an inferior grade Gene Dan itinerant cultivator, she's good enough as an experimental subject. With a wave of his hand, he transmitted the Tao of the mental demon that he had just deduced to his avatar in the Penglai sect. Just use an avatar to fool a Gene Dan itinerant cultivator. There are still many good things in the primordial chaos. There was a place called the Lost Tao Chaos Hole in the primordial chaos. This Lost Tao Chaos Hole was because the 3,000 Great Tao had yet to be fully developed. There was only one or a few incomplete Great Tao. Since I have nothing to do, I might as well study the incomplete laws of heaven and earth from these Lost Tao Chaos Holes. Liu smiled and stepped into the primordial chaos to find a Lost Tao Chaos Hole to study the laws of Great Tao. He did not disturb the hidden chaos vine. Penglai Island. Liu's avatar received the Tao of the mental demon from his main body and shook his head with a smile. With his soul as one, His main body and avatar naturally had the same thoughts. All right, giving out opportunities is what I like to do the most. With a sway of his body, Liyu's avatar tore through the void and rushed towards the western wilderness. In the periphery of the western wilderness, Heaven's legacy city was the territory of the Itinerant Cultivator Alliance. Most of the Yu-Yutian itinerant cultivators were gathered there. Naturally, the Fairy of Seven Emotions appeared in this area as well. Soon, Liu found the Fairy of Seven Emotions in a brothel. Opening brothels, gambling dens, collecting human desires and distractions. Is this the cultivation path of Fairy Seven Emotions? Interesting. After finding the person, Liu is no longer in a hurry. Liu found a restaurant in Tianji City and ordered some food and wine. As he drank, he waited for the right time to create an opportunity. As a connate numinous treasure, the river diagram was born with the Tao of grand simplicity, allowing it to control fate. After testing my providence, I happen to have some free time, so I'll use this opportunity to study fate. Fairy Tai of the river diagram was good friends with Yushan Xiao and Qin Yunzi. For countless years, he had been thinking of ways to avenge Qin Yunzi. He could be considered one of Shi Xian's elders. Liu didn't intend to wrestle with He Tuesday. He just wanted to study it, and he wasn't trying to snatch the Tao of Destiny. So, there was naturally no need for a conflict. The process of order's operation is fate. Thus, fate has arrived. Although Liyu's avatar was only in the immortal soul stage, the path of cultivation in this world still followed the path of order and matter. It wasn't difficult to slightly change the order of some things. With a flick of his finger, someone's gambling luck dropped drastically in the gambling den. F***CK. You can lose a pair of sky cards? A man in a brocade robe was dumbfounded as he watched his pair of sky cards being completely dominated by the dealer's 3 points and 6 points. He lost 10,000 inferior grade spirit stones in an instant. I don't believe it. Again. He touched his storage bag and found that there were no more spirit stones in it. The man in the brocade robe gritted his teeth and took out an ancient token. This is the entrance token of a cave abode in the western wilderness. It's worth 1,000,000 spirit stones. Young Master Zhang, this thing. The dealer in the gambling den saw the token and shook his head speechlessly. Young Master Zhang, this thing, we can't evaluate it. Why don't you take a look at the treasure pavilion? A lousy token worth 1,000,000 spirit stones? What cave abode entrance? Who knew if it was real or fake? What? You don't want it? Who do you think I am? Do you think I'm short of money? If I wasn't short of money, I wouldn't have bet such a treasure to you. Young Master Zhang was enraged as if he had been greatly insulted. He pointed at the dealer and roared. HM? Someone's causing trouble? Hushan, the Fairy of Seven Emotions, who was cultivating in a room upstairs, heard the commotion downstairs and frowned. I'd like to see who dares to cause trouble here. With a cold snort, Fairy of Seven Emotions stepped out of her room and arrived at the gambling den. What's going on? Fairy of Seven Emotions was a Jin Dan Grandmaster after all. Her voice carried with it a faint pressure of Jin Dan, causing everyone in the gambling den to freeze. Boss, this young Master Zhang wants to use this as collateral for 1,000,000 spirit stones. The dealer pointed at the ancient token on the table with a helpless expression. Fairy of Seven Emotions, who do you think I am? How can I cheat? This is the entrance token of a cave abode in the western wilderness. A cave abode's worth is definitely worth 1,000,000 spirit stones. Young Master Zhang pointed at the token and said to Fairy of Seven Emotions. Inside, however, he sneered. You're a Jin Dan. My father is also a Jin Dan, and a middle-grade Jin Dan at that. If I say it's worth 1,000,000 spirit stones, will you admit it or not? Young Master Zhang, I'm afraid you're mistaken about something. Fairy of Seven Emotions used the Tao of Emotions to form a Jin Dan. How could she not know what young Master Zhang was thinking? With a cold sneer, Hushan stretched out her hand and grabbed young Master Zhang. Your father being a Jin Dan and you being a Jin Dan are two different things. Wait until you become a Jin Dan, then you can play this game with me. With a wave of her hand, she threw young Master Zhang out of the gambling den. Fairy of seven emotions, just you wait. After leaving behind a threat, young Master Zhang fled pathetically. Bastard, you dare to blackmail me in my territory? With a cold snort, Hushan was still angry. She grabbed the token that young Master Zhang left on the table and was about to throw it out. Just as she grabbed the token, the seven emotions' true chi in her body vibrated violently. Is this really a treasure? Fairy of seven emotions' heart tightened, but her expression didn't change. Casually putting away the token, Fairy of seven emotions turned and returned to her room upstairs. What is this? Why did it activate my seven emotions' true chi? Fairy Chi Ching's true method of seven emotions and six desires was an incomplete cultivation method on a broken jade slip that she accidentally obtained years ago. For many years, Fairy of seven emotions had been searching for information about this technique to see if she could find the next level. Forming a gene Dan, increasing lifespan by 600. But a low-grade gene Dan has no hope of reaching the primordial spirit. Her lifespan was decreasing day by day, but there was no way forward. This kind of torture was enough to make Fairy Seven Emotions extremely anxious. Is this token related to my technique? Surprised and happy, Fairy of Seven Emotions hurriedly channeled her seven emotions' true chi into the token. With a buzzing sound, the token turned into a ray of rainbow light, merging into Fairy of Seven Emotions' sea of consciousness. As long as the human heart does not die, the inner demons will not be extinguished. Inner Demon Tao, Seven Emotions, Six Desires Golden Body. Gathering the seven emotions and six desires of all living beings, immortality and longevity. A mysterious technique appeared in Fairy of Seven Emotions' mind. Fairy of Seven Emotions was scared out of her wits when she saw the technique's information. Golden Immortal, Inner Demon Tao True Inheritance, Seven Emotions, Six Desires, 13 Tao True Inheritance that leads directly to the Golden Immortal Tao True Inheritance? Seeing the information in her mind, Fairy of Seven Emotions turned and ran. After getting this from Zhang Fugui, if she didn't run and he came back for revenge, wouldn't she be dead for sure? Fate is truly mysterious. Liu saw that the thread of fate on Fairy of Seven Emotions' body had undergone a huge change. Originally, she was going to die in a treasure hunt in a few decades. But now, her fate had changed. When fate changes, so does karma, as expected of the Tao of Fate. Chapter 1065. Life and Death, Fortune and Misfortune, Success and Failure are all in fate. After Liu's torment, Fairy Seven Emotions' fate underwent a huge change. Through the connection of fate, Liu saw countless future developments and fate for Fairy Seven Emotions. Fate is the process of order. For the entire world from birth to end, this is the inevitable fate. This is the origin of destiny. Liu looked in the direction that Fairy Chi Ching had left in, and a smile appeared on his face. However, there are many different kinds of fates for a person. This is the fate of the big picture. The details are uncertain. In Liu's eyes, he saw that in Fairy Chi Ching's future, there would also be calamities and tribulations, the rise and fall of fortune, the entanglement of karma, merit and karma. No wonder the Tao of Fate, also known as the Tao of Tai, is called the Khanate Tao. The beginning of all things in the world must be the Khanate Tao. The number of Dayan was 50, and the number of heaven was 49. This world had 49 Khanate Taos. Fusing any one of the 3,000 Taos and turning oneself into the incarnation of that Tao was a Tao fusing Golden Immortal. But only by fusing the two Khanate Taos and evolving into one's own 3,000 Taos could one prove one's destiny. As for eternity, that would mean severing the two Khanate Taos. Let the 3,000 Taos originate from oneself and not from the world. If the 3,000 Taos originate from oneself, one could transcend the world and prove eternity. In essence, the great Tao of this world is somewhat similar to my Tao of order and matter. My Tao is also to turn myself into the source of all matter and order. However, Liyu's path of training eventually returned to nothingness and chaos, returning to the state before matter and order were born. So the road is still long. The fate that was tested on fairy teaching was just a trivial matter in the world of cultivation. Liyu had been tricking people, bestowing opportunities, and he would continue to do so in the future. Liyu had already tampered with the talisman fairy 7 emotions fused with. Everything that happened to her fate would be recorded, so there was no need to keep an eye on it. My clone should focus on cultivation. If you want to cause trouble, let the main body do it. With a flash, Liyu's doppelganger instantly broke through space and returned to Penglai Island to continue his closed-door cultivation. As for Liyu's main body, it began to toss and turn again. This guy is very interesting. In the chaotic, untainted land, Liyu's main body observed the lost Tao chaos hole along the way and also obtained some incomplete great Tao laws. In the chaotic, untainted land, Liyu found a very interesting guy. This was a silent and gloomy void. There were no stars or broken continents. The surroundings were filled with countless lost Tao and chaos. Liyu had originally collected some incomplete heaven-earth laws from these lost Tao chaos holes when he suddenly made a new discovery. In this void, shrouded by the lost Tao chaos hole, there were 3 flourishing and full of vitality greater worlds. In the middle of these 3 greater worlds, there was a blood-red giant tree. Roots extended from the giant tree and penetrated these 3 greater worlds. Every leaf of the giant tree was filled with thick blood, the smell of money, the decay of power, and the killing of battles. Countless tree roots extended into the core origin space of the 3 greater worlds, swallowing and plundering, absorbing nutrients to support itself. Under the giant blood-red tree, a beautiful woman with silver-gray hair and beautiful appearance was sitting cross-legged with her back against the tree trunk. She wore a light golden dress, and her eyes were tightly closed, as if she was in a trance. A mass of auspicious cloud rushed out of the woman's head. The cloud was circular with a square hole in the middle, like a huge copper coin. The Tao of heaven is to take from the surplus and make up for the deficiency. The Tao of man is to take from the deficiency and make up for the surplus. This is the Tao of man, and also the Tao of plunder. Liyu glanced at the giant blood-red tree and smiled. Postnatal plunder the great Tao and use money as a symbol of the great Tao. Although it looked a little strange, on second thought, wasn't money the greatest plunder? Money was worthless in itself and was just an equivalent exchange. However, this worthless thing could be exchanged for everything. If this was not plunder, what was? However, your Tao of plunder is completely robbery, and there is no technical content at all. No wonder you can't reach Tao integration. Liyu chuckled. Let I tell you what plunder is. With that, Liyu waved his hand, and an undetectable light silently fell into the mind of the woman in the golden dress under the giant blood-red tree. The woman in the golden dress, who was comprehending the Tao of plunder through the giant blood-red tree, suddenly felt an inexplicable message in her mind. A bank? You can buy anything with a piece of paper without spirit stones? Stock? You can get money by putting your name on it? Lottery? Pyramid scheme? Monopoly? Currency appreciation or depreciation? Is there such a thing? The woman in the golden dress named Kong Fong, who had comprehended the Tao of plunder for countless years, suddenly realized that she hadn't even started on the Tao of plunder yet. Comprehending the Tao incantation that emerged in her mind, Kong Fong felt that every word was a gem and every operation was the perfect embodiment of the Tao of plunder. My Tao is complete. My Tao is complete. Such a brilliant Tao of plunder was perfectly in line with the laws of heaven and earth. As long as she practiced this Tao and deeply comprehended it, it would be a piece of cake for her to integrate with the Tao of plunder. But where did this information come from? No one in this world had ever proven the Tao of plunder. Naturally, there couldn't be someone like the Tao of plunder. However, without the Tao of plunder, Who could have such a deep understanding of the Tao of plunder? Could it be that I suddenly had a flash of inspiration and was enlightened? Even Kong Fong didn't believe this. Such a profound Tao, such a perfect operation, it was simply unheard of. It was simply not something he could imagine. No matter what's going on, it's a good thing for me. No Tao ancestor would be interested in the postnatal Tao, and no one would scheme against it. Then, I'll take it as an opportunity. Unable to figure out the reason, Kong Fong was too lazy to think more. She focused on comprehending these Tao incantations and strived to attain the Tao of plunder as soon as possible. Young girl, you don't have to plunder Tao of plunder to have such a deep understanding. Liu recalled his life before transmigrating and shook his head speechlessly. After seeing these methods, you will naturally have the same understanding as plundering Tao of plunder. Of course, this was just an episode. Liu cast his gaze into the depths of the chaotic primitive world. The Khanate Time Tao's Khanate Spiritual Treasure Universe Light Bell, the Khanate Space Tao's Khanate Spiritual Treasure Universe Cauldron, and the Doom Tao's Primordial Chaos Golden Dipper. These things are all in the chaotic primitive world. Chapter 1066. This is the Cave of Time. After tormenting Kong Fong, Liu had only done it on the spur of the moment. He still needed to get down to business in the primordial chaos. Releasing his soul, Liu sensed the abnormality of the space-time power here. He immediately knew that this was the birthplace of the Khanate numinous treasure, the cosmic light bell. Taking a step forward, Liu silently arrived at the Cave of Time. Although it was called the Hole of Time, this hole was not much smaller than an ordinary Greater Thousand World. Looking into the depths of the cave, Liu smiled and shook his head when he saw the Khanate numinous treasure birthed in the crystal wall of time. It's clearly a Khanate numinous treasure, but it was born at the wrong time. In this world, many golden immortals were formed from Khanate numinous treasures. For example, Tao Ancestor Great Yi's River Diagram, Tao Ancestor Life and Death Book, Tao Ancestor Zenith Heaven's Merit Exquisite Pagoda, and Tao Ancestor Great Void's Great Void Mirror. These Tao Ancestors were the roots of Khanate numinous treasures. Once a Khanate numinous treasure was born, it was born with a great Tao, a golden immortal Tao ancestor. Their origins were high, and their foundations were deep. However, if a golden immortal Tao ancestor born from a Khanate numinous treasure wanted to improve and fuse with the opposite great Tao to attain creation, he could only leave his true spirit and reincarnate. Leaving his true body and reincarnating his true spirit was the most dangerous moment. Which cultivator who coveted this great Tao would let go of such an opportunity? Having a Khanate great Tao and a Khanate numinous treasure at the same time was simply too wonderful. Compared to those Khanate numinous treasures that have already been born and become golden immortals, this cosmic light bell is more miserable. The universal light bell that had yet to be fully nurtured had no chance of being born. Liu looked at the cosmic light bell in the depths of the Cave of Time and shook his head with a sigh. In this world, the ancestral dragon has fused with the Khanate great Tao of the universe. As a result, the extreme universe cauldron has no chance of being born. Furthermore, the cosmic light bell is also the ancestral dragon's target. With time and space as one and the universe as one, the ancestral dragon could attain creation. If old Peacock had not hidden the tracks of the cosmic light bell and the river diagram concealed the heavenly secrets, why would we wait until now? You have already been taken away by the ancestral dragon. In the future, this cosmic light bell would be used by the old Peacock, the river diagram, and the book of life and death to trick people. Not only did he give Shi Xian an opportunity, but he also tricked the ancestral Gragon, making him unable to comprehend the Tao of time. Instant's Millennium Opportunity only allowed Shi Xian to save a period of time for cultivation. Was there a need to scam him? Who's better than I? Shaking his head with a smile, Liu stepped into the Cave of Time. Ripples of time rippled over, and the flow of time accelerated rapidly. 1,000 years passed in an instant. Every instant had hundreds of thousands of years passing by. Fortunately, this is only a divine ability and not the acceleration of time in the entire universe. Otherwise, I wouldn't dare to come. Liu planned to stay in this world for 100 years because the crisis of the origin world was imminent. If all this time passed in an instant, then the losses would be huge. Ignoring these rapid fluctuations of time, Liu leisurely walked forward, as if he was taking a leisurely stroll in the vast and mighty flow of time. For Liu, the river of time could be reversed, sped up, or stopped at will, so these fluctuations of time naturally had no effect on him. Roar! In front of the cave of time, a huge dragon-shaped beast that seemed to span the entire void was roaring in the void. As its huge body twisted, endless ripples of time rippled out. This was the Torch Dragon. Day when you open your eyes, night when you close them, winter when you inhale, summer when you exhale. This was the Torch Dragon. The Time Dragon. Letting the Torch Dragon cover up the fluctuations of time of the cosmic light bell is indeed very suitable. Even if there were fluctuations of time in this cave of time, at most, it would only discover the Torch Dragon that was about to pass through the 5 decay of heaven and man. It would not be able to sense the existence of the cosmic light bell. The few golden immortals very tacitly tricked the ancestral Gregon. Sure enough, it was done flawlessly. Looking up at the Torch Dragon in front of him, Liu sighed again. Everyone below the golden immortal realm is an ant. In the future, this Torch Dragon that has cultivated to the 5 decay of heaven and man with great difficulty will be treated as a chess piece, triggering a tribulation of the Tao heart and directly turning into ashes. Of course, Big Boss Lee was not a benevolent saint. He did not care whether the Torch Dragon lived or died. But it's more fun to play a game. Taking a step forward, Liu's figure drifted through the endless ripples of time and silently landed on the Torch Dragon's head. Roar, cut it out. The Torch Dragon suddenly realized that a person had appeared on top of its head. Just as it was about to roar, it heard Liu's soft shout and an aura that was above heaven and earth pressed down on its head. As soon as it roared, the Torch Dragon hurriedly stopped and trembled all over. It obediently prostrated itself on the ground, not daring to move at all. Although a primordial beast like the Torch Dragon did not have high intelligence, it naturally knew how powerful this terrifying aura that was like the might of the heavens was. You're quite obedient. Liu smiled and reached out to pat the Torch Dragon's head. In that case, I'll give you a chance. He reached out and grabbed, and the Torch Dragon's huge body instantly shrank, turning into a small red snake and landing in Liu's hand. In the world of the desolate celestial emperor, there's a foreign immortal king called Red King. His true form is a time beast, and his cultivation of the Tao of time is very powerful. With a wave of his hand, Liu put the Torch Dragon into the resource vault. So, I'll refer to Red King's power and combine it with the Torch Dragon's innate ability to make you into an immortal king. According to the standards of this world, creating an immortal king should be about the same combat strength as a golden immortal, right? I wonder if an existence like an immortal king can appear in this world. Liu smiled with interest. In essence, the path of an immortal king was also the path of laws, and Red King was the embodiment of the Tao of time. However, unlike the nascent soul of this world, the path of an immortal king was to merge the soul, body, and laws into one, carving the Tao of time into the body and soul. This world also has a path of martial Tao with an immortal body. The Tao ancestor of the great Tao of strength is also a martial Tao cultivator. Moreover, this void universe is still in its nascent stage, so it's more inclusive. It should be able to accept an immortal king system like the Torch Dragon, right? In any case, it was just an experiment. If the Torch Dragon was not accepted by heaven and earth and was annihilated by the heavenly tribulation, then he would just snatch it back and continue with the next experiment. In any case, Liu had a lot of power systems in his hands. If he experimented with them one by one, there would always be a suitable one. Come out! With a wave of his hand, Liu released the reconstructed Torch Dragon. Rumble! A violent rumble sounded between heaven and earth, and the countless worlds in the void universe shook together. Time surged like water. The enormous torch dragon's body became even larger. Its entire body was no longer corporeal, and it had become a mighty long river of time that ran through heaven and earth. Tao integration? Golden immortal Tao integration. The phenomenon manifested by the long river of time made countless mighty figures in this world jump up in shock. Looks like the experiment was a success. Liu laughed strangely. Let's play big. Chapter 1067. Tao Fusion? Someone has fused with the Tao of Time. All the golden immortals and Tao ancestors in the multiverse were dumbfounded by the sudden turn of events. No one in this world had ever cultivated the Tao of Time, and no one had ever heard of a cultivator with the Tao of Time. How had someone managed to do so? What in the world was going on? Could it be the universal light bell? The Tao ancestor of 5 elements, the Tao ancestor of life and death, and the Tao ancestor of Tai all knew about the existence of the universal light bell and had left a backup plan to trick others. They all hurriedly released their minds to sense the situation in the cave of time. The universal light bell is still there, and it hasn't even finished nurturing? Then, who's fusing with the Tao? Just as old Peacock and the other 2 were bewildered, a huge figure appeared on the vast river of time in the void. Roar! A colossal torch dragon stirred on the river of time, stirring up ripples in its wake. A torch dragon? Can a torch dragon fuse with the Tao? At this moment, the countless people who saw this torch dragon were all dumbfounded. How? How had it fused with the Tao when it didn't even have intelligence? Who says you can't fuse with the Tao if you don't have brains? The Tao is the Tao. What does the Tao need intelligence for? The less intelligent it is, the more in line with the essence of the Tao. Liu laughed uproariously. It was a bit too much, but wasn't it more interesting? Roar! At this moment, a resounding dragon roar resounded in the void. Within the true dragon great world, a gigantic, boundless dragon's body burst forth with a crystal-clear light. Space seemed to transform into a curtain of water as the colossal dragon traversed endless space and rushed to the torch dragon's side. This was the ancestral dragon. After fusing with the Tao of space, the ancestral dragon had been attempting to fuse with the Tao of time, to fuse with the Tao of time, and ascend to the creation realm. However, someone had fused with the Tao of time in advance for no apparent reason, and by a brainless torch dragon at that. How could the ancestral dragon endure this? Beast! Die! An enormous dragon claw tore through space with the power to shatter and collapse. It viciously slammed down on the torch dragon. Tao integration was a process. Even though it wouldn't take too long, it was still a process. As long as this process was interrupted, as long as this beast was killed, the ancestral dragon would still have a chance to merge with the Tao of time. Otherwise, all his plans would be for naught. We can't let the ancestral Gragon kill Torch Dragon. At this moment, the old Peacock, the He-Two, and the Book of Life and Death made their decision. Although the great Tao of space and the great Tao of time did not conflict with the 3 of them at all, the 3 of them did not have any conflicts. However, the ancestral dragon was an ally of their enemy. The friend of my enemy is naturally my enemy. Chua, a 5-colored brilliance, shot up into the sky. The 5 elements circulated and the 5 colors intertwined. This was the old Peacock's innate 5 colors divine light. The 5-color divine light swept through everything. Once the ancestral dragon was brushed by the 5-color divine light, it would definitely be brushed down. Even if the 5-color divine light couldn't suppress the ancestral dragon, it would at least delay him for a few moments. After a few moments, Torch Dragon would complete his Tao integration, and there would be no need to think about anything else. Heaven and earth will eventually be destroyed. A streak of rainbow light shot out, bringing with it the power of the return of heaven and earth, and the return of all things to silence as it swept toward the 5-colored divine light. Tao Father Nirvana had taken action. The 5 elements in Nirvana were great Taos of opposite ends. Moreover, Nirvana countered the five elements. Boom! The five-color divine light and the Nirvana divine light collided fiercely, erupting with an earth-shattering boom. The void cracked, and countless stars were reduced to dust. Some worlds in the void near, where the two lights collided, were instantly blasted hundreds of millions of kilometers away by the shockwave. The power of a golden immortal was monstrously terrifying. Torch Dragon's Tao integration, Destiny's blessing. With the old peacock blocked, the He too immediately took action. In the void, a mysterious scroll spun slightly, and a beam of destiny landed on the Torch Dragon, wanting to protect it during its Tao integration. Intercept the heavenly secrets. A power that could intercept the heavenly secrets, and destiny flew over, blocking the He too's blessing of destiny. This was Tao Father Nirvana's ally, Ananda Tathagata, who had fused with the Tao of fate interception. The two streaks of light collided and disappeared without a sound. The power of destiny and the power of fate interception are really environmentally friendly when they fight. Liu could not help but exclaim when he saw the power of destiny and the power of fate interception dissipate silently without destroying anything. Both sides had people interfering. With this delay, the ancestral dragon's spatial annihilation claw had already hit the Torch Dragon. The ancestral dragon, who had fused with the Tao of space, ignored distance and did not have the problem of speed. Logically speaking, he should have hit the Torch Dragon when he attacked. However, the Torch Dragon, who had the power of time, could affect the time around him even if he had not completely fused with the Tao. It was only at this moment that the ancestral dragon's attack broke through the ripples of time and hit the Torch Dragon. Boom! With an earth-shattering bang, blood splattered, scales and broken bones flew everywhere. The dust has settled. Upon seeing this, all of the attacking golden immortals came to a halt. There was no suspense. On the verge of Tao integration, their essence spirits had already fused with the great Tao and could not protect themselves. Torch Dragon was bound to die after suffering such a blow. Forget it. It's not a good thing to let a brainless beast be on the same level as me. Old Peacock shook his head and retracted his five-color divine light, planning to turn and leave. Roar! At this moment, a furious roar sounded. In the shattered void, the Torch Dragon's huge figure appeared in front of everyone again. Its body was covered in wounds, and many places revealed ghastly white bones. Clearly, the Torch Dragon had suffered serious injuries under the ancestral dragon's spatial annihilation. But why was it only injured? Shouldn't it have been reduced to ashes after suffering a blow from the ancestral dragon? Why was it only injured? Because it's different from you. Liu laughed strangely. The body of an immortal king is not like yours. Its ability to take hits is simply ridiculously strong. Moreover, rebirth from a drop of blood is also a basic configuration. Roar! With another furious roar, the Torch Dragon's injuries were completely healed in an instant, and there were no more injuries on its body. Boom! A gigantic snake tail shattered the endless void and lashed out at the ancestral Gragon. Oomph! A beast will always be a beast. Apart from brute force, what else can you do? Pursing his lips in disdain, the ancestral dragon waved his claws and set up an endless spatial barrier in front of him. So close is the end of the world. How can a beast like you hit me with an endless spatial barrier? Boom! With a sweep of its tail, a boundless force shattered the spatial barrier and lashed at the ancestral dragon's body. How is this possible? Despite his powerful body, the ancestral dragon was sent flying hundreds of millions of kilometers, spewing out blood. Roar! The river of time flashed, and the Torch Dragon's figure instantly caught up to the ancestral dragon. Bam! Another sweep of its tail sent the ancestral dragon flying with a scream. Bam! Ah! Bam! Ah! As the golden immortals and Tao ancestors exchanged glances, the ancestral dragon was being beaten like a punching bag by the Torch Dragon. Then, did the Torch Dragon succeed in its Tao merge? A beast can Tao merge? You're asking me, but who am I supposed to ask? All right, Li Yu thought. What's wrong with a beast Tao merge? Next time, I'll find a stone to Tao merge for you to see. Chapter 1068. What was Tao convergence? It was to transform oneself into a great Tao of heaven and earth. From then on, I am the great Tao, and the great Tao is me. Cultivators naturally needed great wisdom, perseverance, courage, a firm Tao heart, a pure soul, and a severed distracting thoughts to find their true nature. Only then could they accommodate the great Tao. However, a beast without intelligence had no distracting thoughts. It had always been its true nature. Originally, such a beast had no way of cultivating apart from its own growth, nor was there any possibility of Tao convergence. However, I've given it the foundation for the Tao integration stage, so it can naturally fuse with the Tao. Otherwise, how can connate spirit treasures Tao convergence? Connate spirit treasures fused with a great Tao the moment they were born. The moment they were born was the moment of Tao convergence, which was also the moment of the birth of intelligence. With Li Yu's accumulation in the great Tao of time and the cosmic light bell that was being nurtured next to it as a reference, it wasn't strange that the torch dragon had the foundation for Tao convergence. I was also experimenting. I didn't even know if there was a chance of success. Fortunately, the experiment succeeded. Li Yu looked up at the horizon and saw the torch dragon chasing after the ancestral dragon to beat it up. Blood spurted out of its mouth, scales scattered, and it howled in agony. As for the other golden immortals, they had already left. The torch dragon had already reached Tao convergence, so it was a foregone conclusion. Who would have a time to get involved in a battle between two beasts? Take your time fighting. In terms of combat strength, the torch dragon that I modified is incomparable to ordinary golden immortals. Although the torch dragon didn't have intelligence and couldn't speak of any great Tao, it had already integrated the great Tao of time into itself. Every move it made was a great Tao. Coupled with its immortal, king-level body and combat strength, the torch dragon's strength was considered top-notch among golden immortals who had fused with a great Tao. All right, it's too torturous to have all future cultivators of the great Tao of time worship a beast as their ancestral master. Li Yu shook his head with a smile. That's why I'll bring the torch dragon back. It's less than 100 years. Don't be nervous. Waving a hand, Li Yu ignored the battle between the torch dragon and the ancestral dragon and walked into the depths of the cavern of time. The precious tree of time? It even bore the fruit of time? Li Yu smiled and nodded when he saw a small tree growing in a place that looked like a pool of time. There were a few fruits hanging on the tree. For ordinary cultivators, eating a fruit of time would allow them to comprehend time, which is very beneficial to their cultivation of the Tao of time. Unfortunately, I don't like it. There is even a pile of heavenly immortal fruits in the Garden of the Immortal Abode, which could allow one to become an immortal after eating just one of them. Naturally, Li would not be interested in such things. In the future, this thing will fall into the hands of the Penglai sect. Let's leave it here for now and find an opportunity to let the people from Penglai come here to gain experience. Ignoring the precious tree of time, Liu stepped into the depths of the cave of time and arrived near the cosmic light bell. The bell was still being nurtured, but Torch Dragon had already fused with the great Tao of time. No matter how much he nurtured it, there was no way he could become a golden immortal Tao ancestor. In the original fate, you were similarly unable to be nurtured and become a golden immortal Tao ancestor. You've only become an idle connate spirit embryo in Shixian's hands. Liu smiled and extended a finger to tap the cosmic light bell. I've made a copy of the great Tao of time that Torch Dragon came into contact with when he fused with the Tao. I'll give it to you. Time flowed like water into the cosmic light bell. With the complete great Tao of time, you're actually a Tao ancestor of time. As long as I take Torch Dragon away, you can immediately fuse with the Tao. Retracting his finger, Liu smiled. Taking away a Tao ancestor of time and returning a Tao ancestor of time is more appropriate. No need to thank me. With a wave of his hand, Liu leisurely stepped out of the cave of time. You're still fighting? You're really in the mood. A golden immortal Tao ancestor had already fused with a great Tao. If it weren't for the great difference in strength, it wouldn't be easy to kill him. Torch Dragon was stronger than Ancestral Dragon, but it would still be more difficult to kill him. Apart from the two of them, no one else was interested in the two great Taos of time and space, nor did they have any enmity. So, if you can't kill him, then take your time. None of the Golden Immortals paid any attention to the battle between the twin dragons of time and space. Liu couldn't be bothered with them either. Judging from Torch Dragon's Tao Fusion, just now, if I create all sorts of Tao Fusion Golden Immortals, I really can gain all sorts of great Taos. But this is a paradox. Only by mastering this great Tao could he create a corresponding Tao Fusion Golden Immortal. The 5 elements were wind, lightning, light, darkness, and space-time. Liu had already cultivated these basic great Taos to the point of chaos and disorder. It wouldn't be difficult for him to create a Tao Fusion Golden Immortal. However, Liu is still far from mastering the other great Taos, such as the Khanate 5 virtues, karma, fate, reincarnation, slaughter, destruction, doom, calamity, and so on. I'd better go take a look at the Ultimate Universe Cauldron first. At least I can gain something from it. With a sway of his body, Liu soundlessly traversed the endless void and instantly arrived at the Ultimate Universe Cauldron. This was still the chaotic wilderness, filled with energy storms and lost Tao chaos holes. However, there was a region of space that was extremely stable. This was the Ultimate Universe Cauldron. The Ancestral Dragon had merged with the Khanate Space Great Tao, and the Ultimate Universe Cauldron was an unborn Khanate spirit treasure, so there was no way it could become a Tao Fusion Golden Immortal. The Ultimate Universe Cauldron was born at the wrong time. Its level of power is enough for Tao Fusion, but with the Ancestral Dragon in its way, it will never have a chance. Unless the Ancestral Dragon dies, or achieves eternity and leaves this world, it will have a chance to be born. With a tap of his finger, a colorless, transparent cauldron that seemed to be made of glass appeared in front of Liu. The cauldron's mouth rippled with pure, watery light. However, it wasn't water but endless space. Within the Ultimate Universe Cauldron, there were countless dimensions and countless small worlds. Through the cauldron's mouth, Liu could even see the various life forms that lived in these small worlds. There were humans, beasts, and all sorts of demons. I should take a copy of the Space Great Tao of the Ultimate Universe Cauldron as well. With a flick of his finger, he made a copy of the spatial laws contained within the Ultimate Universe Cauldron, and Liu looked at the cauldron's mouth. The Ultimate Universe Cauldron is hidden in the endless void, an existence that even the Ancestral Dragon couldn't find. A few important figures who discovered it by chance treated it as a hidden place. Liu smiled at the cauldron's mouth, reached out, and grabbed 2 items. One was the Chaos Primordial Dipper that emanated the aura of doom, and the other was a ball of formless, clear light. A Khanate spirit treasure of the Khanate Tao of Doom. Unfortunately, something happened when it reincarnated. When the apocalypse came, people's hearts were haunted. The Tao of Doom also contained the Tao of mental demons. Thus, the Chaos Primordial Dipper's true spirit reincarnated and was killed by its own mental demons. After extracting a portion of the Tao of Doom from the Chaos Primordial Dipper, Liu casually tossed the Chaos Primordial Dipper back and turned to look at the formless, clear light in his hand. A Khanate spirit treasure, the Great Void Mirror. It was also a golden immortal Tao ancestor. This isn't the Great Void Realm's true body, but the aura it left behind can also allow me to analyze the Tao of illusion. After analyzing it for a while, Liu tossed the clear light back again. I've gained quite a lot. Liu looked at the Ultimate Universe Cauldron and smiled. Here, I can play another game. Chapter 1069. The struggle in this world is a struggle for the Great Tao. In order to fuse 2 opposing innate Taos, the range of choices was very limited. Thus, conflicts were inevitable. Not many people are fighting for the primordial Chaos Golden Dipper's path of last luck. The primordial Chaos Golden Chalice, whose primordial spirit had been annihilated, was only left with the shell of the primordial spirit embryo. So, I can create a primordial spirit. As for who got tricked, they can only blame their bad luck. He reached out and grabbed, casually grabbing the remnant soul of a fallen cultivator and throwing it into the Chaos Origin Golden Chalice. Of course, this alone was not enough to fuse the remnant soul with the primeval dipper. In the chaotic, untainted land, there are also worlds that are about to be created. Liu raised his eyes and looked around. He found a world that was still in the state of primordial chaos and was being born in the chaotic world. Back then, stories about traveling to the primeval age, traveling to the primordial chaos, and making friends with Pangu were very popular. He reached out, grabbed the primeval dipper, and sent it into the greater thousand world that was still in the state of primordial chaos. The 3,000 fiend gods of the chaos are the original incarnations of the 3,000 great Taos. Let the primordial chaos golden dipper be nurtured in this world and nourished by the innate energy. Then, the primordial chaos golden dipper and the primordial chaos golden dipper will fuse into one. The birth of such a great chiliocosm would definitely not give birth to a true connate numinous treasure. However, it was not difficult to nourish the primordial chaos golden dipper. Actually, if I want to comprehend the chaos, studying the greater thousand realms that are about to be born is a very good method. Liu stepped out and came to the side of the great thousand world that was about to be born. He sat cross-legged in the void and comprehended the great thousand world that was being born. The primordial chaos, the birth of heaven and earth. In the chaos of nothingness, the process from nothing to something was naturally worth studying. Unfortunately, it will take more than 1 trillion years for this thing to truly be born. For the sake of my research, I can only accelerate your maturation. With a wave of his hand, the long river of time swept up. The great thousand realms that were being nurtured sped up by billions of times. Gradually, 49 innate Taos were born from the void. Nothingness was the beginning of heaven and earth. Yes, it was called the mother of all creation. The process of the innate Tao's birth was the process of coming into existence from nothing. It was the first order born from the chaos. Then, yin and yang separated, creating heaven and earth. The post-celestial great Tao was born, and all things in the world were born. The 3,000 great Taos were order, and everything in the world was matter. Matter and order intersected, running through heaven and earth. I didn't get a good look at the process of heaven and earth splitting. Rewind and do it again. With a wave of his hand, the river of time flowed in reverse. Everything in this world flowed in reverse, returning to before the creation of the world. Then it continued to evolve. Rewind, do it again. The birth of matter is a little slow. Hurry up. Was this how the Tao of doom and Tao of destruction came about? Apocalypse and destruction had actually run through the entire world from beginning to end, although it was still too early for the world to be destroyed. However, the individuals in the world are constantly being destroyed. Let's stop here and study it carefully. The power of time is indeed suitable for watching movies. Big Boss Lee was watching this world like a movie. If he wanted to rewind, he would rewind, and if he wanted to fast forward, he would fast forward. The birth process of a world naturally has a lot of research value. After studying this thoroughly, when my clone harvests all the laws of heaven and earth in the void universe, I can use these insights to finally complete the evolution of chaos and disorder. Of course, this research process would definitely not take a day or two. This kind of rewinding or fast-forwarding would take a long time. Anyway, the time Tao belonged to Torch Dragon. Fast-forwarding and fast-retreating would consume Torch Dragon's strength. Liu naturally did not care about consumption. As for whether Torch Dragon cult would have any objections, I definitely did not create you for fun. If I don't let you display your value, then why would I spend so much effort? Not doing it, then I'll find a more obedient one to be the time Tao ancestor. The universe light bell is still waiting to take over. This seemingly playful action actually had a purpose. How could a cheapskate like Big Bossly be generous to such an extent? Not only did Torch Dragon have to be a coolie, but he also had to bring it back when he left. Not a single bit could be wasted. Back then, the crocodile ancestor had been dismantled cleanly. Not a single bit was wasted. Liu's main body was here, tormenting a greater thousand world that was about to be born. His clone, who was cultivating in seclusion on Penglai, had also made great progress. After researching for so long, the pressure on my head has finally been relieved a lot. During this period of torment, he had harvested a few great Daos and also obtained many incomplete great Dao laws from the Lost Dao Chaos Hole. In addition, he had studied the birth of a world and had done a lot of research on the 3,000 great Daos of that world. The 3,000 great Daos of a world were naturally only an extension of the 3,000 great Daos of the entire void universe and could not touch the essence. However, for his clone, this was a huge improvement. After studying these laws clearly, I can freely improve my cultivation level. According to the cultivation path of this world, he might not be able to cultivate to the level of a golden immortal Dao ancestor even after spending tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of years. In this world, Liu only planned to stay for 100 years. He definitely could not slowly waste time like them. So the cheating mode is on. With a flash, Liu's clone soared into the sky from Penglai Island and stood in the air. I'm going to transcend the tribulation. If you don't want to die, don't come here to die. With a step, Liu's figure instantly rushed out and rushed into the sky. The ancestral master is going to transcend the tribulation? Was he playing it now? Su Jifei looked up at the void and was stunned. You're already an eternal realm existence. What tribulation are you going to transcend? What are you going to do now? A perfected master of our sect is going to transcend the tribulation. Some other Penglai cultivators who did not know the inside story looked up at the sky, their faces full of admiration. When an essence soul expert transcended the tribulation, the Yin spirit would turn into the Yang spirit and become the Yang spirit. This was a grand occasion for their sect. That's His Highness the Crown Prince, the common ancestral master of Penglai and Yingzhou. When Shi Xian saw the figure in the sky, he was shocked and exclaimed, as expected of the reincarnation of the patriarch. It has only been a dozen years, but he has already reached the level of primordial spirit tribulation. It's thunder. It's raining. It's time to collect the clothes. There was a strange cry in the sky. The figure standing proudly in the void stretched out his hand, and there was a loud bang in the sky, and the tribulation lightning crashed down. The lightning was like a dragon, and it crashed down. The fierce and domineering power seemed to shatter the sky. Even from afar, this kind of power made the hearts of the Penglai cultivators tremble. It's only at the level of the 72 earthly thunder. It's not enough at all. Liu, who was standing proudly in the void, opened his mouth and swallowed the fierce and domineering tribulation lightning. Wow, he swallowed the tribulation directly? Seeing this scene, countless Penglai cultivators were stunned. What is this? There's something even scarier later. Liu smiled and waved his hand. He looked up at the void and shouted, "Let the tribulation come more fiercely." Boom! The lightning was like rain, and the lightning was like a dragon. The entire sky turned into a sea of lightning. Ancestral Master, this is the act of being struck by lightning? Shi Xian blinked and almost laughed out loud. Chapter 1070. The Essence Soul Tribulation was the Sun Spirit. The Sun Spirit stage required the 4-9 heavenly tribulations. The 4 heavenly tribulations had 9 stages each time. When the 4 heavenly tribulations were over, the Essence Soul would reside in the void and become a celestial being. Boom! The thunderbolts were like an ocean, rolling like raging tides. This was the first of the 4-9 heavenly tribulations, the 9 heavens lightning tribulation. The 9 heavenly tribulations were each stronger than the last. From the 72 earthly thunders to the 36 heavenly thunders to the nine heavens' divine thunders. Tribulation transcendence also allows me to obtain the general outline of the heavenly lightning techniques and comprehend the Tao of calamity. Not bad. Liu smiled. He reached out and grabbed, and the sea of lightning fell into his hand. Then, under the shocked gazes of countless people, he grabbed the ball of lightning and swallowed it. Eat the heavenly tribulation? The ancestral master is eating the heavenly tribulation? Punlai Sek's Grandmaster Jean Dan and Essence Soul Perfected Masters couldn't help but shudder when they saw this. We have to be prepared to die if we want to transcend the heavenly tribulation. We have to fight to the death and tremble in fear. If you do this, we will be under a lot of pressure. Not bad. Not bad. The 72 earthly thunders are indeed something. Come, continue. The first 3 heavenly tribulations were the 72 earthly thunders. It was just that their power kept increasing. Swallowing the heavenly tribulation lightning was obviously showing off. Even if he wanted to use the heavenly tribulation lightning to temper his body and soul, there was no need to swallow it. Boom! Boom! The 9 heavenly tribulations descended one by one. Then they were all caught and eaten by Liu. While using the heavenly tribulation lightning to temper his body and soul, he also took some heavenly tribulation lightning techniques and passed it to his main body so that it could analyze the heavenly tribulation lightning techniques and comprehend the Tao of calamity. After a while, the first heavenly tribulation was officially over. He had already obtained the general outline of the heavenly lightning techniques, but he had only comprehended part of the heavenly tribulation lightning techniques. Not enough? Then let's do it again. Liu laughed loudly. Then he triggered another heavenly tribulation. This is 2 consecutive tribulations? The Punlai disciples below were just about to congratulate the ancestral master for successfully transcending the tribulation when they suddenly saw a drastic change in the weather. Strong winds howled in the sky. They suddenly realized that the ancestral master was about to transcend the tribulation again. This was the second tribulation, the soul-severing heavenly wind tribulation. The wind blew from the fontanelle into the 6 bowels, passing through the dantian and the 9 orifices. The bones and flesh dissipated and the body disintegrated. Huff! Huff! The wind howled in the sky, and the clouds surged. A storm swept up, and it was as if even the void was about to be blown away by the strong winds. However, this was only the outer appearance. The real heavenly tribulation had already fallen on Liu. Samadhi, heavenly wind, formless cool breeze, 9 nether cold wind, 6 unity storm. All kinds of wind appeared above Liu's head and poured into his body through the baihui. Decompose, annihilate, dissipate under the blowing of the strange wind. Liu seemed to be dispersing his body and soul and dissolving the foundation of his existence. What an interesting wind tribulation. The heavenly tribulations that Liu had encountered before were almost all thunder tribulations. He rarely saw this kind of wind tribulation. After carefully comprehending it, he found that there was indeed a lot of mystery in it. There's a kind of weathering force in nature. Even mountains can eventually dissipate under the weathering of time. This kind of wind tribulation is a concentrated explosion of the weathering force. This was not only a tribulation, but also a cultivator's opportunity. Through this weathering force, the impurities in one's body would be removed, and the body and soul would be purified and untainted. Wind is also a kind of natural disaster. In this heavenly tribulation, in addition to the heavenly wind technique outlined, there is also the great Tao of disasters. The body and soul of Liu's clone had long been purified, and there was no need for the wind tribulation to purify it. Then let's destroy it. With a thought, the various strange winds that poured into his body instantly disappeared and were all transmitted to the main body, allowing the main body to analyze the true meaning within. In a short while, the 9 wind tribulations had passed. The violent winds dissipated, and the world was clear again. Ancestral Master has passed the second tribulation? Congratulations, Ancestral Master, for passing 2 tribulations in a row. From now on, your young spirit will be immortal. Seeing the violent winds dissipate, the world was clear, and an ethereal figure stood in the void. The Punlai disciples hurriedly congratulated in unison. Hee, it's still early. Since he was going to pass the tribulation, he might as well pass it all at once and study the heavenly tribulation. Boom! There was a loud bang in the void, and endless flames surged, covering the sky and earth. The 3rd tribulation had been triggered. This was the fire tribulation, the 9 flames burning heart tribulation. The true sun fire, the great Een frost fire, the cleansing glass fire, the red lotus fire, the underworld fire, the 5 elements true fire, the 7 emotions fire, the invisible divine fire. All kinds of flames descended from the sky. 9 flames burning heart. This 9 was not 9 kinds. 9 was the extreme number, and it represented a lot. At this moment, all kinds of flames fell on Liu's body. They burned the body, burned the soul, burned everything. This was also a heavenly tribulation and also a form of training. Just like the previous wind tribulation, this fire tribulation also burned the impurities in the body and soul. However, the fire tribulation also had the effect of calcining, training, tempering, and refining the body and soul to become purer and stronger. No wonder so many people in this world are afraid of the heavenly tribulation and avoid it. This kind of training is not something that ordinary people can endure. When a mortal became an immortal, they naturally had to go through the 49 heavenly tribulations and the 5 decrements of heaven and man. They had to be constantly tempered, shed the corruption of the mortal world, and become a pure and flawless connate true spirit. If they couldn't endure this tempering, then they could only die. Since I'm going to train, then I'll train harder. He opened his mouth and sucked. It was as if a black hole had appeared, and the flames in the sky were pulled up by this huge suction force, turning into a fire dragon that continuously rushed into Liu's mouth. Ancestral Master is addicted to the heavenly tribulation. Is the heavenly tribulation really that delicious? How does it taste? A group of junior disciples were full of yearning. Their expressions seemed to be, Ancestral Master, share some with us too. This made the Jin Dan Grandmasters and Immortal Soul Venerables twitch their mouths. Delicious? You'll turn into ashes if you touch a little. Do you want to try? After swallowing the fire tribulation, he let his main body study the heavenly fire spell outline and the true meaning of the fire tribulation. Then, Liu attracted the 4th heavenly tribulation. The 4th heavenly tribulation was the water tribulation. Xianming primordial water, 1 heavenly primordial water, all kinds of water appeared in the heavenly tribulation. Melt, dissolve. Water was also a disaster, and also a heavenly tribulation. Thousands of water came, corroding, seeping, melting, corroding, all kinds of magical powers exploded in his body. That's not right. This kind of tribulation. If it's an ordinary cultivator, it's impossible to survive. At this moment, Liu realized that his heavenly tribulation was a little too powerful. To Liu, this was nothing. But to an ordinary cultivator, this was a tribulation with no chance of survival. The heavenly tribulation is targeted. The better the seedling, the more it needs to be nurtured. But with your method of nurturing, not even 1 out of 10,000 seedlings can survive. Liu shook his head. He also understood that to the heavenly Tao, it didn't matter if 1 billion of them died as long as 1 was chosen. I don't need your nurturing. He opened his mouth again and swallowed, and the Tianshui light was instantly swept away. He had already passed the 4th heavenly tribulation, and with such ease, he was simply a legend in the cultivation world. Ancestral Master, you're cheating. Su Jifei's mouth twitched. You're an eternal existence. Isn't passing the heavenly tribulation as easy as eating and drinking? Chapter 1071. After transcending 4 tribulations, I can entrust my essence soul to the void and become a heaven immortal. Liu smiled and looked at the void. When I become a heaven immortal, if divine light appears, it can also show some signs of auspicious clouds. It seems I can tease you guys. He reached out and patted the top of his head. His pure young essence soul transformed into a beam of light that shot into the sky. It rushed into the endless void and rushed to the peak of the great Tao that did not exist in the real world. The peak of the great Tao, where the Tao was the source of the 3,000 great Tao. It existed and did not exist. When a cultivator became a heaven immortal, their essence soul would be entrusted to the void. This void was the place where the Tao was located. Unfortunately, this thing is just a projection of one's mind. It does not really exist. This is just the projection of the 3,000 great Tao in the cultivator's mind. Liu had planned to take away the 3,000 great Tao while his essence soul was entrusted to the void. Now that he had truly experienced entrusting one's essence soul to the void, he already understood that there was no such thing as where the Tao was. The Tao was everywhere. The so-called entrusting one's essence soul to the void did not mean hiding one's essence soul in a certain void. Instead, it allowed one's essence soul to resonate with the Tao. The projection of the Tao in the essence soul looked like the void where the essence soul was entrusted to the peak of the great Tao. In essence, there was no such place. The great Tao laws will be released at the level of cultivation. When one becomes a heaven immortal, their essence soul will resonate with the great Tao. As long as the great Tao is not destroyed, as long as the connection with the great Tao is not severed, even if one's body and soul are destroyed, a heaven immortal can use this to be reborn. Since he could not obtain the complete 3,000 great Tao laws, he would first sense it, as long as he could obtain a portion of the great Tao's true meaning. When the chaos was first born, yin and yang appeared. Heaven and earth were born together. Taiji and yin-yang formed the great Tao. The 5 elements and 8 trigrams proved the heaven immortal. Posturing had been deeply ingrained into Li Yu's bones and had become an instinct. If he did not recite a poem at this time, wouldn't it be too undignified? The long song was vast and mighty, resounding throughout the 9 heavens. A brilliant light appeared above Li Yu's head. Heaven, earth, wind, thunder, water, fire, and fire. The trigrams intersected. Once again, the Khanate Tai 64 hexagram. As the trigrams circulated, a formless and immaterial power of destiny circulated endlessly within them. Dao, Atai, seeing this scene, Su Jifei was stunned. Ancestral Master, what are you playing at? What happened to the promised great scarlet sky, Dao Ancestor Dark Yellow? Great Scarlet Heaven's Dark Yellow, Tao Ancestor. Qingwei Heaven's Primordial Beginning Tao Ancestor. And Yu Qian Numinous Treasure Tao Ancestor were the 3 great proofs of eternity, existences that transcended the world. As for the Daoyuo Tao Ancestor who had attained Tao with the primordial spiritual treasure, 33-story Xian Huang exquisite pagoda of heaven and earth, he still dared not use the name Xian Huang. He could only call himself Daoyuo Tao Ancestor. Why would someone like you play with the Tao of Tai? That was He Tu's job. Do you want to fight with He Tu for the Grand Tao of Destiny? After knowing that the Patriarch was Tao Ancestor Black Yellow of Great Scarlet Sky, Su Jifei also asked Yu Shanxiao about the stories of these great figures. He who thought that he knew the inside story was suddenly frightened by Li Yu's celestial phenomenon. In response, Li Yu said, "You're thinking too much." As the Book of Change's 8 trigrams circulated, there was suddenly a change. Boom! With a loud boom, the Book of Change's 8 trigrams instantly disappeared, and 5 brilliant rays of light soared into the sky. The 5 elements and 5 colors reinforced and restrained each other, circulating endlessly. It became the 5 elements Great Tao again? Thinking of his ancestral master's relationship with Tao Ancestor 5 elements, Su Jifei nodded. The ancestral master would definitely not snatch the 5 elements Great Tao. After all, Tao Ancestor 5 elements was his disciple. In the void, the 5 elements circulated and the five-colored divine light circulated endlessly. In an instant, another change occurred. The five-color divine light instantly merged into one, turning into a cloud of Xianhuang qi. Xianhuang circulated, and all living things were born. It was as if a world had evolved in the Xianhuang qi, the cycle of life and death, the circulation of the five virtues, the formation, residence, destruction, and emptiness. All kinds of scenes were constantly evolving. Xianhuang qi. This is the ancestral master's fundamental great Tao. However, before Su Zhifei could finish his praise, the Xianhuang qi underwent another change. Boom! Yin and yang separated, and the black and white taiji yin and yang fish slowly spread out in the air. Yin and yang separated, and light and darkness alternated, just like the beginning of the world. It became the Tao of yin and yang again. All right, Su Zhifei had already lowered his head and stopped looking. It was not strange for the ancestral master to cause a commotion. It's still too far away. Li Yu sighed. He had not completely grasped the laws of heaven and earth of this world, and merely a projection of the great Tao at the moment of celestial being was not enough to complete the evolution. Thus, Li Yu's celestial being vision finally stopped at the yin-yang phase. Prime Clear Yu use yin-yang, two elements divine light. It seemed that this was the great Tao of yin and yang that Yu had passed down. When this scene appeared, it immediately alarmed the divine, sovereign great world's divine, sovereign emperor. Tao ancestor Nirvana wanted to merge the great Tao of yin and yang. In ancient times, he had colluded with the ancestral dragon and Ananda Rulai to take advantage of Qin Yunzi's reincarnation to launch an attack, causing Qin Yunzi's death. As Tao ancestor Nirvana's henchman, the divine sovereign was responsible for keeping an eye on Yu Tian for Tao ancestor Nirvana, specifically killing cultivators who cultivated yin and yang techniques. Li Yu's yin-yang dual qi scene was immediately discovered by the divine sovereign, who had been keeping an eye on Yu Tian. There are still people cultivating the Tao of yin and yang in Yu Tian. That inheritance hasn't been wiped out yet. The divine sovereign sneered, a mere early-stage celestial being cultivator doesn't need me to personally take action. With a wave of his hand, a divine decree flew out. Rakshasa, make a trip to Yu great world and deal with that newly ascended celestial being cultivator. Yes, in the divine sovereign great world, fresh flowers filled the sky in a gorgeous palace. Amid the holy radiance, a white-clothed goddess stepped out of the palace. Lotus flowers bloomed under her feet, endlessly appearing and disappearing. The white-clothed goddess soared into the sky and flew towards Yu Qian with the sound of hymns. TSK. Instead of coming himself, they sent a divine Tao, celestial immortal who had survived 2 Deva's blight. You're looking down on I far too much. Li Yu shook his head with a smile. Even if you came yourself, I wouldn't bother to take action, much less a mere 2-stage celestial being. With a flick of his finger, Li Yu's free-hired thug received another mission. A foreign divine cultivator has invaded our realm. Emperor Yama, who was cleaning up otherworldly demons near the world's boundary, was shocked to hear the seal of Samsara's notification. A foreign divine cultivator? How preposterous! How dare you snatch the power of faith from this emperor's territory? They're courting death. Faith power was the foundation of God. If the people of this realm worshipped this foreign god, how could the gods of the underworld survive? A foreign divine cultivator invading the realm was an invasion. This was an enemy that wouldn't rest until one of them was dead. Hymns drifted through the air as heavenly flowers rained down. Dazzling divine splendor flooded the area. A white-clothed goddess leisurely walked over, stepping on an endless lotus flower. Damn it! Emperor Yama was even more enraged when he saw this scene. Just this scene alone was more welcomed by the believers than the eerie underworld. She was clearly here to steal his business. Die! The enraged Emperor Yama didn't hesitate. He grabbed the seal of Samsara and smashed it at the white-clothed goddess with all his might. How terrifying was the power of a three-stage seal of samsara. The country bumpkin, who had just arrived near Yu Tian and was about to descend upon Yu Tian as a god, was struck by the seal of samsara. However, the Rakshasa goddess didn't even have time to act cool before she was smashed to death. Chapter 1072. Damn it. When the Rakshasa goddess was smashed to death by Emperor Yama's seal, the divine emperor, who'd been keeping an eye on the matter, flew into a rage. Bastards, why are you gods of the underworld interfering in this matter? The divine emperor was naturally aware of the gods of the underworld that had appeared in Yu Tian. However, gods of the underworld existed in many other worlds, so it was normal for them to appear in Yu Tian. The gods of the underworld only cared about souls and didn't care about the outside world. But why were these gods of the underworld attacking as soon as they saw each other? How dare a few sky immortal realm gods of the underworld act so impudently in front of me? The Tao ancestor of life and death had disappeared for countless years, and the emperors of the Nine Nether Plane had been infiltrated by various big shots. The Emperor of Fengdu had pledged allegiance to Moth Phoenix. The Emperor of Dark Sea had pledged allegiance to the Tao ancestor of death, and the Emperor of Nine Treasures had become a Buddhist disciple. The Nine Nether Plane was no longer in the era of the Tao ancestor of life and death. The Divine Emperor snorted angrily and stepped out of the Divine Emperor Great Realm. I'd like to see what kind of ability you have to interfere in this matter. This was the will of Tao Patriarch Nirvana. The will of Tao Patriarch Nirvana. Who would dare stop him? Who could stop him? Vast divine light soared into the sky, and endless holy light swept through the world. The Divine Emperor stepped forward, and a will to enslave all life spread out. The Tao of enslavement was the Divine Emperor's Tao. It was only an acquired great Tao, and the Divine Emperor hadn't reached Tao convergence yet. He was only a half-step golden immortal. Yu Xiao has left Yu Tian in search of an opportunity to reach Tao convergence. The most powerful beings in Yu Tian are only a few sky immortals. I like to see who dares stop me. Who can stop me? Divine light surged, and a dazzling golden path surrounded by holy light spread out from the void, extending all the way to Yu Tian. On this sacred golden path, a sacred and splendid chariot, pulled by 9 divine unicorns, was constantly advancing. On the sacred chariot, a group of fairies danced gracefully, and a melodious hymn drifted out. A group of goddesses with pure white wings flew in front of the chariot with flower baskets in their hands, sprinkling sacred and beautiful petals from the baskets. Golden light opened up the path, and fresh flowers sprinkled down the path. It was sacred, majestic, and extremely luxurious. Divine Tao cultivators are really good at showing off. Liu couldn't help but sigh in admiration as he looked up at the sky and saw the sacred and luxurious atmosphere. When it comes to posturing, this kind of divine cultivator who specializes in fooling their followers should be the most professional. Master, Tao Ancestor Nirvana's lackey, is about to arrive at Yu Tian. Do you need me to send him away? At this time, knowing that Liu, Tao Ancestor Black Yellow, was studying the great Tao, the old peacock hurriedly asked Liu through the token. He's just an ant. There's no need to pay attention to him. Liu smiled and waved his hand, not caring about this God King at all. Yes, the God King was just an ant in front of the old peacock, let alone Tao Ancestor Black Yellow, who had attained eternity. After hearing Liu's words, the old peacock ignored the God King. Boom! In the void, a brilliant golden great Tao swept over from afar and directly touched Yu Tian's boundary. This is a half-step golden immortal? A half-step golden immortal who cultivates the divine Tao? Emperor Yama, who had just killed the Rakshasa goddess and was feeling smug, suddenly saw this scene and was scared silly. A half-step golden immortal was already in contact with the great Tao. In front of such a person, celestial immortals were not much stronger than ants. Killing a foreign god who had violated the boundary had caused such a big problem? It's over. I'm dead for sure now. The Yama Emperor was so scared that his entire body was trembling. Holy, holy, holy! Vast and mighty holy lights swept over, and a sacred and gorgeous chariot, pulled by 9 holy unicorns, slowly drove over. Endless divine radiance illuminated heaven and earth, and a melodious hymn spread through the void. In the sky full of flowers, the sacred and majestic God King, who was sitting on the chariot, slowly raised his head, and an awe-inspiring divine aura spread out. You gods of the netherworld, how dare you interfere with my affairs? You're courting death. I'm merciful and will give you a way out. Kowtow. Submit. Become this emperor's servant. This is your only choice. Heaven and earth echoed with his words. Endless divine radiance surged in the void, and the divine aura was awe-inspiring and unparalleled. The half-step golden immortal realm had already left his mark on the great Tao. Although he had not reached the level of I am the great Tao, he could already draw upon the power of the great Tao. As the God King spoke, the endless pressure of the postnatal enslavement, great Tao pressed down on the gods of the netherworld on the boundary. With the God King's cultivation, it would only take an instant for these gods of the netherworld to be enslaved by him and become his slaves. However, Big Boss Lee's methods were not something ordinary people could imagine. At this moment, the trembling Yama Emperor suddenly discovered a brilliant light erupting from the seal of samsara. A boundless and unimaginably tyrannical power was suddenly added to his body. Boom! The Emperor Yinluo only felt a violent explosion in his mind, and in an instant, his divine soul and strength increased infinitely. 6 brilliant and incomparably mysterious light wheels slowly rotated in his divine soul. At this moment, the Emperor Yinluo only felt that all things in the world, all living beings, and the reincarnation cycle of all things were under his control. The 6 paths of samsara. This is the 6 paths of samsara. This is the real 6 paths of samsara. The Emperor Yinluo's courage was boosted when he felt this incomparably vast power. So what if you're a half-step golden immortal? This is the power of the great Tao. This is the true power of the 6 paths of samsara. Even if you're a half-step golden immortal, you still can't escape the control of the samsara of samsara. As for who was behind this, there was no doubt that the Book of Life and Death was in charge of the 6 paths of samsara. The person behind this must be the Tao ancestor of life and death. You're thinking too much. Liu shook his head with a smile. This is just an experiment that my true body came up with by combining Emperor Zuochio's samsara Tao with the heavenly technique of the 6 paths of samsara from Huang's Celestial Emperor's world and Limo's dream path samsara. As for whether it's a trap or not, that's a detail. Don't worry about it. Boom! A brilliant divine light suddenly burst out of the Emperor Yinluo's body, and 6 incomparably mysterious light wheels appeared in the void, the power of the samsara of samsara, shaking heaven and earth. Enter the samsara and reincarnate into the animal path. The light of the 6 paths of samsara flashed, and a light wheel inscribed with countless images of beasts spun in front of the Emperor Yinluo. Following the Emperor Yinluo's judgment, the light wheel of the animal path suddenly burst out with a beam of light that landed on the Emperor Yinluo. Even with the strength of a half-step golden immortal, the Emperor Yinluo couldn't resist this light at all. He couldn't even dodge and was hit just like that. This was the great Tao's law. The Emperor Yinluo screamed and fell off the sacred chariot. He rolled on the ground and suddenly turned into a white horse and a mare. Being sent into the animal path by the 6 paths of samsara was a true beast. The Emperor Yinluo became an ordinary mare with no magic power at all. In the eyes of the 9 unicorns pulling the chariot, it was as if a sister Lin had fallen from the sky. How could they miss such a good opportunity? And so, the scene was so miserable that they couldn't bear to look at it directly. Similarly, it was indescribable. I recommend a book by a friend. the destroyer of unhappy plots. It's an infinite flow of imagination. You're an experienced driver, so remember to fasten your seatbelt. Chapter 1073. What had happened to the divine emperor? None of the 9 unicorns were ordinary beasts, but chaos beasts with innate divine abilities. The 9 unicorns took turns ravaging him, and he was already dead. As for how he died, Emperor Yama's response was that it was too tragic, and he couldn't bear to say it. Henceforth, all cultivators below the golden immortal Tao ancestor level in the heavenly planes would eat their mounts, regardless of whether they were male or female. As for why, no one said anything. 6 paths of reincarnation, the book of life and death. When Emperor Yama sent the divine emperor into the animal path with a single blow, the present golden immortals all jumped up in shock. The book of life and death has appeared. Didn't he hide for countless years, planning to shed his true form and reincarnate? Has he not reincarnated yet? Or has he already reincarnated and merged with the grand Tao of life and death again? At this moment, all the golden immortals who'd been eyeing the grand Tao of life and death began to have their own ideas. Bastard! Who's tricking me? Who's tricking me? An exasperated roar rang out from an inexplicable space in the depths of the netherworld realm. I've been hiding for countless years to trick Tao ancestor Nirvana and steal his Tao of Nirvana. Now that I've done this, they'll definitely think it's me. They'll definitely guess that I've reincarnated and merged with the Tao again. Bastard! It really isn't me. I really didn't do it. Bearing the blame that would never be cleared, the Tao ancestor of life and death was seething with anger. Who's the one behind this? Even if I saw the power of the 6 paths of reincarnation, I'd think it was me. If it weren't for the fact that it's impossible for there to be 2 Tao ancestors of life and death in this world, I would have thought he was one of them. The Tao of life and death governed the postnatal Taos of life and death, as well as the 6 paths of reincarnation. Apart from someone who's merged with the Tao of death, no one else has merged with the other postnatal Taos. That's why there's no such thing as several postnatal Tao ancestors working together to create reincarnation. Who is it? Tao, ancestor Great Void? Did he use the Tao of illusions to create reality? His suspicions, the Tao ancestor of life and death, quieted down, silently planning to find the best plan in this chaotic situation. The book of life and death? What is he planning? In the Nirvana major world, Tao ancestor Nirvana sat by the lotus pond, frowning as he looked in the direction of the 9 underworld major world. As for the God King's death, Tao ancestor Nirvana didn't even care about someone like him who came to bootlick. As long as he was willing, he could take in hundreds of such half-step gold immortals who cultivated the postnatal Tao. Is the book of life and death plotting against me? My Nirvana Great Tao just happens to be the opposite of his Samsara Great Tao. It made sense for her to have designs on me. But if he wanted to do something, why did he expose himself? For the sake of a God Emperor, exposing his many years of scheming was simply too brainless. If it wasn't for the Nirvana Grand Tao, then what was he planning to do? For a time, Tao ancestor Nirvana's head hurt from thinking, but he couldn't find any clues. All of the golden immortals and Tao fathers in the heavenly planes who were concerned about this matter felt their heads hurt, unable to make heads or tails of it. This is just an experiment of mine to test my understanding of the samsara Tao of life and death. It's not targeted at a third party, so please don't read too much into it. Liyu's clone shrugged and took a step forward, arriving in Western Wilderness in an instant. This was a desert on the outskirts of Western Wilderness. In the great battle of ancient golden immortals, Taoist Yujing, who had attained the Khanate Great Tao of Slaughter, had fought against Taoist Star River, who had attained the Tao of Holy Virtue. Taoist Yujing had even slain Taoist Star River's good friend, Taisher Fiendlord. A trace of Khanate slaughter chi had spread over, causing the vast land to be barren and devoid of life. Therefore, in the depths of Western Wilderness, where the great battle of the 3 golden immortals had ended, Taoist Yujing's connate slaughter sword formation and immortal slaying sword formation were left behind. Apart from Taoist Yujing's slaughter sword formation, there was also Taisher Fiend Lord's Great Tao Inheritance Treasure, Taisher Fiend Token, and Taoist Arriver's Sword of Holy Virtue. The Grand Beginning Great Tao of the Grand Beginning Demon Lord's return to primordial with neither good nor evil, and the Star of her Do Father's Tao of Saintly Virtue are the Grand Beginning and Saintly Virtue Great Taos of this world. As for Taoist Yujing's immortal slaying sword formation, Liu raised his eyes to look beyond the void and shook his head again. Tan Tian, this isn't your doing. I don't believe it. This is clearly your intention to let the immortal slaying sword formation achieve eternity in this world. Yujing must be the original spirit of the immortal slaying sword formation. Of course, this matter had nothing to do with Liu. Liu casually stepped into the West Wasteland. The endless energy storms and space cracks didn't affect him at all. Even though it was only a celestial immortal clone, Liu's clone was already able to transfer some power from his main body. A ray of light rushed out from the top of his head, with Taiji Yin and Yang in the middle, the 5 elements in the middle, and the 8 trigrams in the periphery. This was the foundation of Liu's Great Tao, the Taiji 8 trigrams diagram. With the addition of some insights from this world, this Taiji 8 trigrams diagram had new things. The 8 trigrams diagram circulated, and the power of destiny surged. Liu immediately found a route that was least dangerous to him. Then, the 5 elements separated, decomposing all energy and matter. The Taiji Yin and Yang fish swam, and the origin of order controlled everything. Even if he did not use his main body's power, he could easily step into the depths of Western Wilderness. Galaxy Mansion? There's only one space waymark, but the mansion is not here? Then I can only let my main body take it. Sitting in the chaotic wilderness, Liu's main body, who was studying the evolution of heaven and earth, stretched out his hand and grabbed a sword of Saint Virtue from the void. With a glance, the path of Saint Virtue was in his eyes. I've already created the path of Saint Virtue for the Emperor of Zhongzhou. Why do I still need this thing? After analyzing it, he found that the path of Saint Virtue was essentially the same as the art of moderation that he had created. Then, he casually threw the Galaxy Saint Virtue sword back. All right, spirit and soul were one. So naturally, the clone also knew what the main body did. Clone Liu shook his head and walked to the next place. Taisher Demon Lords, return to the beginning without good or evil. I still know how to study it. Liu walked to a dilapidated void. Amidst the broken tiles and debris, Liu found the Taisher demonic order. A third blight tribulation spiritual treasure was not destroyed by Taoist Yujing's sword. He probably thinks that you're not worth it, right? Reaching out his hand, the Taisher demon token fell into the hands of clone Liu. Buzz, an extremely evil demonic aura instantly erupted. The heart demon eroded the heart, and the blood demon devoured the body. Darkness, confusion, death, curse, blood, terror. Endless demonic aura pressed down on Clone Liu. Clone Liu had only just entered the realm of celestial being. Compared to the Taisher demon token that had passed the third blight tribulation, it was countless times worse. It seemed very dangerous. Chapter 1074. I've also studied the Tao of neither good nor evil. Stretching out his finger, Liu's kindness, integrity, benevolence, love, courage, protection, endless kindness rushed out from his fingertips. When studying the demonic heart Tao, Liu not only studied the demonic heart Tao of the 7 emotions and 6 desires, he also studied the holy light Tao that gathered kindness. With a point of his finger, he gathered the kindness in the hearts of all living beings and turned it into a ray of holy light that collided with a monstrous demonic aura. Then, returned to absolute beginning without good or evil. With a chuckle, as Liu pointed his finger, the demonic aura that represented evil and the holy light that represented good instantly converged and blended with each other, turning into a clear and faintly discernible connate absolute beginning pure chi. You, the primordial demon token's primordial spirit was dumbfounded when he saw this. Back then, the primordial demon lord had combined the acquired great Tao of evil and was planning to combine the great Tao of good to go against the connate heavens and become the connate absolute beginning great Tao. Before he could complete it, he was chopped off by Taoist Yujing. However, the primordial demon token was also clear about this great Tao of return to absolute beginning without good or evil. At this moment, seeing Liu use the holy light of kindness to turn the demonic aura of evil into connate absolute beginning pure chi, the primordial demon token was shocked speechless. Why? Do you want to learn? Liu looked at the primordial demon token with a faint smile. Back then, the primordial demon lord created the method of return to absolute beginning without good or evil, but he didn't have time to cultivate it. It's hard to say if he can go against the connate heavens and become absolute beginning. I have a method of good Tao here. You saw how I went against the connate absolute beginning pure chi just now. Do you want to learn it? Senior, the primordial demon token was already very clear that this cultivator who seemed to be in the early stage of the celestial being realm was definitely a mighty figure who hid his cultivation. But giving away a true inheritance of the great Tao for no reason, was there such a good thing? As the ultimate treasure of the primordial demon lord, the primordial demon token had been immersed in the demon Tao for countless years. It had seen countless tricks of the demon Tao and seen countless people's sinister hearts. Its mind was much more cunning than ordinary magic treasure, original spirits. May I know what task Senior has for me? What fell from the sky might not necessarily be a fortuitous encounter. It could also be a huge trap. The Taisher heavenly demon was deeply aware of this. He was not so easily fooled. It's nothing serious. The Blood Demon sect was also a branch of the Primal Beginning Devil Gate, and they had caused quite a commotion in the past few years. Seeing that Taisher demon ancestor had a good relationship with Shanshao Palace, I was too lazy to teach them a lesson. Go back and reorganize them so that they can walk on the right path of the demonic path. Don't mess around blindly. Of course, this was just a random excuse. Liu's goal was naturally to cause trouble. I wonder if Senior and Shanshao Palace, as Taisher Demonic Lord's personal treasure, the Taisher Demonic token naturally recognized Shanshao Palace. Hearing Liu's words, he was also curious about Liu's identity. I have some ties with you, Shanshao. It's not convenient for me to tell you about what happened back then. A trace of yin and yang energy flashed across Liu's fingertip as he nodded with a smile. Prime Clear you use yin-yang, two elements divine light. Seeing this trace of yin and yang energy, the Taisher demonic token no longer had any doubts. To be able to cultivate this true inheritance of Yu, you must be of Yu's lineage. Back then, Taisher demon ancestor had a good relationship with Yu Shanshao. This senior in front of him was also one of them. He definitely wouldn't trick him. Many thanks, Senior. May Senior bestow upon me the true technique. This junior will be eternally grateful. The Taisher demonic token was very excited. Return to Taisher without good or evil. This was a great Tao that even Taisher demon ancestor couldn't complete back then. Thus, the Taisher demonic token fell into a trap again. Taisher demon ancestor has already merged with the great Tao of evil. His Taisher demonic canon can point directly to the great Tao of evil. However, it still lacks the great Tao of good. Liu smiled and nodded. The great Tao of good in the present world is naturally most proficient in the Tao of great firmament, who has merged with the Tao of merit. The Tao of innate merit also contains the great Tao of postnatal good. Pointing out with his finger, Liu merged the great Tao of holy light that he had formed by gathering good thoughts with his own research on merit. Adding on the Taisher demonic tokens, return a Taisher without good or evil. He turned it into a one good daily cultivation technique. Don't ask me who Xingyi Shan is. Instilling this one good daily cultivation technique into the Taisher demonic token Liu chuckled. Taisher, demonic token, you want to cultivate with a magic treasure body? Or reincarnate as a human to cultivate from scratch? Of course, it would be best if I could reincarnate as a human. The Taisher demonic token was overjoyed. To be able to reincarnate under the protection of such a great master was truly an unimaginable opportunity. Reincarnation and rebirth were things that even half-step golden immortals couldn't guarantee that they would be able to overcome easily. If they were killed before they could awaken, that would be incomparably miserable. That's simple. Even Emperor Yama could use the 6 paths of reincarnation to send the Divine Emperor into the Beast Dao. Liu naturally didn't lack such ability. Borrowing the power of his true body, he waved his hand. Enter the cycle of reincarnation and reincarnate as a human. A speck of light fell onto the Taisher demonic token. As the great Tao laws circulated, the token instantly shed its true body and reincarnated into a young girl. A young girl in a black robe stood timidly in front of Liu. That black robe was naturally the manifestation of the Taisher demonic token. Thank you for your enlightenment, Senior. With the one good daily cultivation technique bestowed upon me, I shall be named Xing Yishan. The black-robed girl bowed to Liu with a face full of joy. Xing Yishan. Good name. The smile on Liu's face turned a little strange. Holding back the wild laughter that was about to burst out of his mouth, Liu nodded solemnly. You've just reincarnated and are still immortal. I'll send you away first. With a wave of his sleeve, Liu sent Xing Yishan to a mortal kingdom near the East Sea. Then, Xing Yishan, that's the name you gave yourself. Don't blame I. Liu couldn't hold back his laughter any longer. Torment wasn't the goal. The goal was still the Great Tao. The Taisher demonic tome, left behind by the Taisher demonic lord and the Taisher demonic token, contained both the postnatal Great Tao of evil and his own understanding of the Taisher Great Tao of returning to Taisher without good or evil. Combined with Liu's own understanding, it was necessary to conduct an experiment on Xing Yishan. As for that weird name, it really had nothing to do with him. In this world, only Shi Xian, the transmigrator, should understand the meaning of this name. I hope they don't meet too early. Otherwise, Shi Xian will definitely die of laughter, right? Xing Yishan will probably flip out, right? However, some things were just so coincidental. This was fate. This was a coincidence. Big Boss Li would never admit that he had tampered with it. You're Xing Yishan? Shi Xian, who had left Penglai to hone his Tao heart, happened to meet Xing Yishan, who was teaching a few lectures a lesson with the power of the Taisher demonic token in a mortal kingdom near the East Sea. Shi Xian tried his best not to burst out laughing on the spot. Chapter 1075. I practice the one good deed per day cultivation technique. Punishing evil is also promoting good. Is there a problem? Xing Yishan looked at Shi Xian in confusion. Shi Xian's expression was incredulous. One good deed per day? Puffed. Shi Xian couldn't hold it in anymore. It's fine if you're called Xing Yishan, but one good deed per day? What do you mean? Xing Yishan raised an eyebrow, feeling displeased. Even after reincarnating, she had almost no cultivation. But with her true body, she could still use the power of a third blight tribulation sky immortal. Sorry. My mind wandered and I thought of a joke. Shi Xian would rather die than say the meaning of Xing Yishan. You're crazy. Xing Yishan snorted, flung her sleeves, and left. It's exactly as I guessed. Liu laughed and turned away, no longer looking at this joke. He stepped into the depths of western wilderness, and the killing aura around him grew thicker. Killing was one of the signs of doomsday and ultimate destruction. It was also a connate great Tao. As a matter of fact, killing represented extinction. When doomsday came, all living things would be wiped out. The immortal slaying sword formation itself is a sword of termination. It's normal for it to manifest the Tao of killing in this world. In the depths of western wilderness, the four-sword auras of black, white, green, and red pierced the clouds like 4 giant pillars. In the middle of the four-sword auras, a mysterious formation diagram spread out, forming the immortal, slaying sword formation of the Khanate Great Tao of Killing. The heavens number 1 killing formation. Even if it's just a mark formed by some residual aura, it's still extremely terrifying. Ordinary half-step golden immortals would die if they were hit by these Khanate killing auras. Looking at the immortal slaying sword formation mark formed by the residual aura, Liu nodded in satisfaction. Not bad. These remaining aura marks are enough for me to decipher the Khanate Great Tao of Killing. Liu had studied the Khanate Great Tao of Killing and Destruction once on the Chaos Dragon. In addition, he had seen the immortal slaying sword formation of several worlds, so he was no stranger to it. With a wave of his hand, Liu absorbed a strand of the remaining innate Tao of slaughter and sent it to his true body. His true body scanned through the strand of innate Tao of slaughter and compared it with the previous harvest. Soon, he understood the essence of the innate Tao of slaughter. So, there's nothing worth meddling with in the western wilderness? Liu turned his head and glanced around, looking at a dilapidated cave dwelling in the western desert. That is the small world where the Heavenly Sword Sect is located. Liu naturally didn't think much of the Heavenly Sword Sect, whose founder was only at the Sky Immortal Realm. However, Shi Xian, Dubai, and Fairy of Seven Emotions Hushan, who had been tormented by Liu, were rushing to the Heavenly Sword Sect. Shi Xian and Dubai have officially entered the Divine Soul Realm, and are beginning to temper their Tao hearts in search of an opportunity to advance to the high-grade Jindan. They had just entered the Divine Soul Realm not long ago, and were preparing to advance to the Jindan. As for Fairy of Seven Emotions, she cultivated the Tao of Heart Demon of the Seven Emotions and Six Desires. Any treasure trove that opened was the best place to absorb emotions and desires. The Heavenly Sword Sect's strength is average, but the foundation of their sect is not their founder, but their divine soul treasures, the purple and green swords. In the great battle of Golden Immortals, the Heavenly Sword Sect, which didn't even have a Golden Immortal, was destroyed by the aftermath of the battle. The purple and green swords, which hadn't yet matured and were only at the second heaven's blight, were heavily damaged by the innate Tao of slaughter and turned into half-damaged divine soul treasures. The purple and green swords were Dubai's opportunity, so Liu naturally wouldn't snatch it from him. But the Heavenly Sword Sect has a sword technique called the Boundless Formless Sword Aura. From a name, it can only be Dubai's. This is the mandate of heaven. With a flick of his finger, the 8 trigrams flashed at his fingertips. The power of destiny stirred, and the mandate of heaven was born. With a sway of his body, Liu silently passed through the broken lesser dimension of the Heavenly Sword Sect. In front of him was a broken world. The sky was densely covered with countless huge cracks in the void. The ground was cracked and mountains had collapsed. It was a scene of devastation. This broken lesser dimension is also a grotto heaven. Because it's too broken, even Essence Soul experts can't enter. Otherwise, their aura will cause the grotto heaven to be destroyed. Liu stood on a mountain peak that had remained intact in the grotto heaven. He smiled and shook his head. In essence, it's not that this grotto heaven can accommodate cultivators above the Essence Soul realm. After all, there are heaven-connecting spiritual treasures and 3 pure Yang Dharma treasures in here. The real reason was naturally the balance. Once an Essence Soul venerable from outside stepped into the grotto heaven, the balance of the grotto heaven that was on the verge of destruction would be easily destroyed and directly cause the grotto heaven to collapse. To Liu, as long as he had enough control, there was no problem of destroying the balance. I will observe a group of cultivators forming a team to enter an instance dungeon, fight for treasures, and ultimately benefit the main character. Let's see the karma, destiny, providence, and merit involved. Then, I can do some research and do some experiments. With a wave of his hand, an illusory power was produced and concealed Liu's tracks. His main body had obtained the Great Void Tao, so Liu's clone could also use the illusory power. After all, those who entered were all cultivators below the essence soul realm. He wasn't afraid that someone would be able to see through his disguise. Time passed slowly, and the people who participated in the treasure hunt arrived one by one. The Sky Rapier sect was a sword cultivator sect. Other than Peng Lai, Luofu, and Ying Zhou, which had sword cultivator legacies, no one from the other 8 great sects had come. People with different Daos could not work together. If a sect without sword cultivator Dao sent someone over, it would only disturb the Dao hearts of the disciples. It was completely meaningless. As for itinerant cultivators and some small sect, they didn't care about Dao. As long as there were benefits, any Dao was fine. Senior Brother Ying, so many people from Luofu came? Shi Xian, who had just entered the grotto heaven of the Sky Rapier sect, bumped into Luofu's group. Other than Ying Juexiao, even an expert from Luofu's Jin Dan had come. Luofu is a pure sword cultivator sect. Naturally, we attach great importance to the Sky Rapier sect's legacies. Ying Juexiao was second on the genius roll, while Shi Xian was third. Although they had both advanced to the Divine Soul realm and had automatically been removed from the genius roll, but they were still very familiar with each other. Junior Brother Shi, this is our Luofu sword sect's Jin Dan Grandmaster, Uncle Master Qiao Mubai. Ying Juexiao introduced Shi Xian to a stern-looking middle-aged man beside him. Greetings, Uncle Master Qiao. The righteous Dao sect had a good relationship with each other. Shi Xian had become the disciple of Peng Lai's cold thunder god, Mo Yuan, so he naturally called Qiao Mubai Uncle Master. Your senior brother, Mo Yuan's disciple? You don't look like you want to. He has a zombie face, but you're so cheerful. Qiao Mubai joked with a smile. Shi Xian shook his head speechlessly. When it came to his master, he really didn't know how to respond. Liu, who was sitting on the mountain peak, also happened to see these people. Qiao Mubai, in the original fate, the diseasey shapeless sword was automatically sent to you. But now Ai's fate has changed. Let's see what changes will happen. Chapter 1076. Fate is amazing. Having studied fate a few times, Liu's avatar could see through the lines of fate without borrowing the power of his main body. Karma, fate, providence, and merit indeed affect and are related to each other. Merit could increase providence, and merit could not take up karma. Providence was a branch of fate. The increase in providence could change fate. Changing fate also involved karma. The entanglement of karma could lead to some good or bad situations. At a glance, Liu noticed that Qiao Mubai's providence had decreased greatly. In the original fate, Qiao Mubai had returned to the sect in disappointment after obtaining nothing from the treasure hunt. Then, the natural shapeless sword fell from the sky and landed in his hands. Now, Liu had changed his fate. He had changed the fated person of the great boundless formless sword to Dubai. This caused Qiao Mubai's fate to change. In the path of fate, pull one hair and affect the whole situation. Liu realized that his change of fate had caused Qiao Mubai's fate to change greatly. After losing the pure Yang Dharma treasure, the natural shapeless sword, Qiao Mubai showed signs of danger. Since that's the case, I will give you another fate. With a wave of his hand, Liu changed Qiao Mubai's fate once again, as if he had pulled an invisible string. Other than the natural shapeless sword, the Heavenly Sword sect has 2 other pure Yang flying swords. One is the virtuous carrying sword, and the other is the golden light piercing heaven sword. The golden light piercing heaven sword will be part of the Peng Lai sect's collection in the future. There is no karma, so it's suitable for Qiao Mubai. With this, Liu changed Qiao Mubai to the fated person of the golden light piercing heaven sword. The signs of calamity have dissipated. Providence has recovered. After all this trouble, Liu realized that he really felt like he was sorting out the lines in a mess. The entanglement of karma and fate was really a mess. The Heavenly Sword sect's grotto heaven is already damaged. It's dangerous. You have to be careful. Qiao Mubai warned him. and then flew towards the remaining Heavenly Sword Great Hall of the Heavenly Sword sect. The Sky Sword main hall is protected by a sword formation. Other than Grandmaster Jean Dan, who can try his luck, any one of us who goes will die. Let's just focus on searching for opportunities in the outer regions. Ing Juexiao cupped his hands toward Shi, then turned and left. The Heavenly Sword Paradise was in ruins. It was hard to tell where was the fortuitous encounter and where was the danger zone. He could only rely on his luck. Shi smiled and casually found a spot. Then, he rode on a streak of light and rushed over. At this time, Xiao Mubai was flying towards the Heavenly Sword Hall. When he passed by a collapsed mountain, a spatial crack suddenly spread out silently. The void crack in the Heavenly Sword Grotto Heaven had already stabilized. The sudden appearance of a void crack was too strange and too sudden. Damn it, even an upper-level Jean Dan Grandmaster would die if they were to crash into a crack in the void. In an emergency, Xiao Mubai could only turn around and rush towards a collapsed mountain. This was very hurried. Xiao Mubai had already tried his best to avoid the spatial crack, so his speed towards the collapsed mountain was naturally very fast. Then boom, Xiao Mubai directly crashed into the broken cliff, causing the rubble to collapse. He was dizzy from the impact. Coincidentally, he crashed into a cave abode that even had its restrictions destroyed. Clang, a sword whistled, and a platinum flying sword condensed from the western grand white gold chi whizzed over. The incomparably sharp sword chi seemed to be able to cut the void. Pure yang flying sword. It's over. Caught off guard, he actually fell into a cave and triggered the attack of the pure yang flying sword. There was no room for resistance at all. Xiao Mubai's heart was dead. Why am I so unlucky? Xiao Mubai, who was waiting for death with his eyes closed, suddenly discovered to his shock that this pure yang flying sword had actually suddenly fallen into his hands just like that. It had directly opened the central restriction and directly recognized him as its master. There's such a good thing? Xiao Mubai was dumbfounded. A Dharma treasure automatically delivered itself to him after a fall. Was this a plot from a novel? There was really such a thing? Xiao Mubai felt as though he was in a dream as he held the pure yang ranked gold light sky-piercer sword in his hand. Fate is so wonderful. Liu clapped and laughed. What's the big deal about picking up a Dharma treasure after a fall? You originally had a Dharma treasure directly fall from the sky and directly fall into your hands. After tormenting Xiao Mubai, Liu began to look for experimental subjects again. Shi also has the sign of calamity. The calamity is covered by providence. This trip was daunting but not dangerous, and there was also a great harvest. Merit and providence could block calamity. It was indeed so. For a destined protagonist like Shi, there was naturally no need for Liu to do anything. He was someone who was protected by the river diagram. The river diagram was fate. Shi was naturally favored by fate. There are still a few unlucky people who could be tormented. Liu looked up and saw an unlucky person with a head full of bad luck. This person was the villa master of a small sect called Deity Sword Villa. His name was Li Huayuan. Originally, he was a chess piece placed by the Emperor God in Yuyuqian. But now even the Emperor God was dead. Li Huayuan, this chess piece, intended to follow the Emperor God's previous order to deal with Shi and test whether Shi cultivated the Yin-Yang Great Tao. Naturally, he was extremely unlucky. You're already so unlucky, I can't bear to do it. But your posture is so good, I really can't help it. Anyway, you're already dead. It's not a big deal to be more unlucky, right? He flicked his finger, making the death omen star above Li Huayuan's head shine brighter. This time, you have to be careful not to choke to death when drinking water. Liu laughed strangely. This power of fate reminds me of a movie I watched years ago, Final Destination. The power of fate, it's really interesting. Li Huayuan, who was flying in the sky sword cave, suddenly felt a chill on his back. What's going on? As a Grandmaster Jean Dan, he was very sensitive to auras. This chill was definitely not ordinary. Li Huayuan quickly stopped and released his divine soul to sense the surroundings carefully. Over there, there's actually a sharp aura. In a place like the Sky Sword Cave, a sharp aura that could make a Grandmaster Jean Dan feel a chill must be a magic treasure flying sword. Ha! I actually found a magic treasure flying sword here. This old man is really lucky. Laughing loudly, Li Huayuan flew towards the place where the sharp aura came from. Then, he was shocked and angry to find that a young rogue cultivator who had just stepped into the Qi channeling stage suddenly took a step ahead of him and held the light green magic treasure, flying sword in his hand. Preposterous. Go to hell. Li Huayuan was furious. He waved the sword and fiercely slashed at the young rogue cultivator who was in the Qi channeling stage. In his opinion, a mere rogue cultivator in the Qi channeling stage could be easily crushed to death. However, the moment the long sword slashed out, a void crack suddenly appeared in the path of the flying sword. The sword slashed at the void crack. Crack! The flying sword instantly exploded. A piece of the flying sword just so happened to bounce back and shoot through Li Huayuan's head. A Jean Dan Grandmaster specially came here to commit suicide and gave all his wealth to me? The rogue cultivator blinked his eyes and only felt that it was inconceivable. Fate was so wonderful. Chapter 1077. Haha, you've benefited from Ai's efforts. Liu saw Hu Shan, the fairy of 7 emotions, smiling sweetly. She was walking gracefully in the heavenly sword grotto heaven. Her beauty was unparalleled. Li Yu's efforts, Xiao Mubai's joy of obtaining the golden light-piercing heaven sword, and Li Huayuan's fear of death were all absorbed by Fairy of 7 emotions into her own demonic heart Tao. After obtaining my great Tao of the mental demon, your luck is really flourishing. Forget it. Your eyes test subject after all. I won't torture you any further. At this moment, Fairy of 7 emotions, Hu Shan, had used the demonic heart Tao to refine her 7 emotions' true Qi. She had actually raised her inferior grade Jean Dan to superior grade Jean Dan. Originally, there was no possibility of raising a Dan's grade. However, if Big Bossly said it could, then it could. I can even create a Tao-level golden immortal for you. What's the big deal about refining your Jean Dan? Ignoring Fairy of 7 emotions, who was absorbing the power of emotions, Liu looked at Dubai. You are Ai's chosen representative of the demonic Tao. This world still doesn't have a golden immortal of the demonic Tao. I have high hopes for you. The grand beginning demonic ancestor walked the path of grand beginning. He really wasted the name of grand beginning. Return to grand beginning without good or evil. Only one's heart, and I can become grand beginning. Ai's path of the demonic Tao is the heavenly Tao. Liu's research on the demonic Tao was already very deep. He also had a deep understanding of the Tao of grand beginning. After all, when he was still Ice River Swordsman by Zhe, Liu had studied Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning Little Meng. Primordial, the first and only, was the heavenly Tao no matter where it was. Regardless of good or evil, immortal or demon, they could all go against the heavens and become grand beginning. I have a feeling that there's an opportunity for me here. Where's the opportunity? All these years, Dubai had joined Yingzhou and cultivated the Grand Plainest Jade Lotus Tranquility Sutra, because the appearance of this technique was also pure white light. Innate Tai Su tranquil divine light. This world had the great Tao of Tai Su, and there was also a Tao ancestor Tai Su. The Grand Plainest Jade Lotus Tranquility Sutra of the Yingzhou sect was also related to the Grand Plainest Great Tao. However, Dubai's essence was still the freedom law. The Grand Essence True Qi was just a cover. The comfort technique can drive the Grand Essence True Qi, so no one can see through my cultivation base. As expected of the great Freedom Devil Master's true inheritance. A faint smile appeared on Dubai's cold face. He raised his head and looked around, trying to find the opportunity of the Heavenly Sword Cave. Finding nothing, Dubai could only continue forward. Red Maple Mount. One of the celestials soared 12 peaks. After walking for a while, Dubai saw a broken black mountain in front of him. There was still a broken stone tablet at the foot of the mountain. At this moment, only half of the red maple mountain was left. The other half of the mountain had already turned into gravel and scattered around. There was no sign of life on the entire red maple mountain. Only a half-collapsed hall was left. The rest of the place was in ruins. Since it's an opportunity, let's go up and take a look. Whether or not he could gain anything in the Heaven Sword Cave depended on his luck. If he could find the cave abode and relics of the ancient Heaven Sword Sex cultivators, it would be an opportunity. If he couldn't find it, he could only say that he was not fated. Dubai looked ahead and stepped onto the broken red maple mountain. There's a fallen Grandmaster Jean Dan here. Soon after climbing the red maple mountain, on the edge of a gravel cliff, Dubai saw a Jedon stage master who had been stripped clean. It can't be. Only Grandmaster Jean Dan could kill Grandmaster Jean Dan. How could a Grandmaster Jean Dan strip his enemy so cleanly? Other than a set of clothes, there was nothing left. This is obviously the work of a low-level itinerant cultivator. Dubai opened his mouth and shook his head for a while. Well, a Jedon stage master who has just fallen is still very useful to me. With a wave of his hand, the stripped Grandmaster Jean Dan was instantly stored in a jade slip. White lights surged, and Dubai began to refine Grandmaster Jean Dan's cultivation. Li Huayuan of the deity Sword Mountain Villa. This is a rare high-grade Jean Dan sword cultivator among itinerant cultivators. Thunder Sword Chi, Sword Light Division. Li Huayuan sword techniques are indeed extraordinary. These sword technique talismans are suitable for me. Dubai looked at the refined Jean Dan and sword technique talismans and was very satisfied. This is a good harvest. But how did this high-grade Jean Dan die? A sword slash into a crack in space, and the flying sword fragments that bounced back pierced through his head and killed him? That's really unlucky. Seeing the scene in the white light, Dubai was speechless for a long time. A high-grade Jean Dan Grandmaster dying in such a sullen manner. You could be considered the first one, right? He found a secluded place and sat cross-legged on the ground, absorbing the refined sword technique talismans and chi and blood energy. Jean Dan, however, did not move. This Jean Dan is very useful. I can use the Jean Dan's power through the external pill technique, and can even use it as a trump card. A high-grade Jean Dan sword cultivator's killing power was extremely terrifying. If caught off guard, it was not impossible for a Jean Dan Grandmaster to be killed by a sneak attack. Dubai finished absorbing the refined power, stood up, and walked towards the dilapidated main hall on Red Maple Mountain. No wonder no one comes here. Walking to the dilapidated main hall, Dubai discovered that this was only a hall where the Heavenly Sword Sect disciples practiced their sword techniques. Moreover, it was protected by a Jean Dan level sword array. To a Jean Dan Grandmaster, this place was not worthy of their attention. To an ordinary cultivator, this place was not accessible. Naturally, no one came here. I just happened to obtain a Jean Dan. Could this be the will of the heavens? Dubai used the external pill technique to drive Li Huayuan's Jean Dan and mobilize the sword energy within. With a slash of his sword, a ray of golden sword energy broke through the air. The sharp sword light flashed, and 1 turned into 2, 2 turned into 4. In an instant, 16 rays of sword energy were formed. This was the Sword Light Division. The sword energy circled around the main door of the dilapidated main hall and cut open the restriction on the door. The Sword Light Division is indeed extraordinary. Dubai put away the sword light and stepped into the dilapidated main hall. The main hall was in ruins, and there were collapsed stone pillars everywhere. Other than that, the only thing that was intact was a signboard hanging high in the middle of the main hall. When he saw the signboard just now, clang, a sword chime rang out, and a monstrous sword energy descended from the sky. The sword energy was vast and mighty, and it tore open the sky. It would kill anything that stood in its way. In a trance, Dubai only felt a ray of sword energy slash out. The mountains were cut open, the earth was cut open, The void was cut open, and the stars were cut open. Everything that stood in the way of the sword energy was cut open. Unrestrained, free, and unfettered. Cut open all fetters. Cut open all restraints. Obtain great freedom. Obtain great freedom. Boundless, invisible sword energy. When this sword intent rushed into his mind, Dubai's boundless eternity, spiritual, will resonated with this sword intent. The sword intent turned into a sword technique and merged with Dubai's mind. Is this my fortuitous opportunity? The boundless invisible sword energy is indeed very compatible with the freedom technique, as if it was tailor-made for me. Chapter 1078. The Dazizi shapeless sword aura is perfectly compatible with my freedom technique. The Dazizi shapeless sword aura's swordsmanship flowed in his mind. Driven by the freedom technique's idealism, it was as smooth as an extension of his arm. With a flick of his finger, a sword aura that cut off all restraints, unrestrained, free, an eternal sword into the sky. Although limited by his cultivation realm, the sword aura's power was not particularly strong, but the sword intent was very pure and had a deep understanding of the true meaning of Dazizi. Clang, attracted by the sword aura released by Dubai, an invisible sword light broke through the void and turned into a pure white long sword, falling into Dubai's hand. A pure young magic treasure flying sword? The Dazizi shapeless sword? Slightly stunned, Dubai felt a sense of joy and intimacy from the Dazizi shapeless sword in his hand, and laughed involuntarily. The magic treasure took the initiative to submit to me? A pure young magic treasure was similar to the strength of a sun god master. In addition, Dubai also had a high-grade Gene Dan external elixir. With the combination of the two, even if he could not fully unleash the power of a pure young magic treasure, he would have no problem facing a Grandmaster Gene Dan. It is indeed an opportunity. Dubai smiled, turned, and walked out of the ruin hall. Originally, you did not have this opportunity. If I said you had an opportunity, you must have an opportunity. Liu smiled and nodded. Not bad. You can maintain your original heart and did not go astray. I did not waste my efforts to cultivate you. The investment in Dubai could only be considered a long-term return, but it was not useful for the time being. At Liu's current realm, the system's host really did not have much value. It was completely for the sake of completing the system's mission to choose a host. Even I feel that the system's host has no value. Why does the system still assign such a mission? Why does it want me to find a host in every world? In Liu's view, the system's existence was of a higher level than his current realm. Even if the system had a real master behind it, to that kind of existence, what value did such a host have? What was the value? All right, the higher the realm, the more I understand, and the more puzzled I am. Until now, Liu still hadn't figured out what this so-called Great Heavens system all was. What was the purpose of choosing so many hosts? In a sense, Liu himself could be considered a system host. Him in the main world, the voice that doesn't exist in the timeline. What's the use of having another system host? Now, there are already 3 major mysteries. Liu shook his head helplessly. No matter what, the most important thing is to increase our strength. One day, the mysteries will. Only with enough power can we deal with all kinds of changes. Could finally the tour. A shapeless heaven S was. After verifying the grand Tao of destiny once more, Liu was sure that his understanding of destiny wasn't any different from the grand Tao of destiny of this world. Tao, hey! Realm, 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 realm. Realm, 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 realm. The karma, in the world. Ikun Tao. The great Tao of karma in this world was the Buddha. Therefore, I have to find someone to torment. Liu's clone would not be able to play the game of karma with the Buddha, but Yu Tian didn't have a bald. Oh, Buddhism? After all, Liu walked the path of Taoism. He did not have a deep understanding of Buddhist techniques. His strongest technique was the immortal monk king's legacy from Heavenly Emperor Huang. Apart from the Amitabha Emperor's faith incarnation, he did not have a higher Buddhist power. According to Torch Dragon's Tao unification, an immortal king was equivalent to a golden immortal Tao ancestor who had fused with a Khanate great Tao. Mortal immortals were probably golden immortals who had fused with a Khanate great Tao. Great emperors were probably half-step golden immortals. Half-step golden immortals should be enough to fool cultivators who had the ambition to devote themselves to the cause of salvation. I really can't find a hot-blooded youth for this profession. A hot-blooded youth can't possibly have a mind that disregards the four elements. Liu took a step forward and instantly left Sky Sword Grotto Heaven, arriving near Tianji City in the western wilderness. He landed on a mountain peak outside Tianji City. Liu released his divine soul to find a suitable person to fool. Oh, a fated person with Buddhist nature. Buddhist methods of enlightening disciples. The most famous one is Monk Fa Hai. He broke you up, and made you experience the pain of the mortal world. In the end, your heart was dead, and you became a monk and prayed to Buddha. Liu really could not do such a thing. Therefore, I have to play some tricks. Liu stroked his chin. I've already created a fake transmigrator. Then, let's create a fake reborn person. The world hasn't changed, but you've been reborn. In this life, you swore to protect everything you lost. You swore to reach the peak of the heavens. Let your former enemies tremble in fear under your divine might. But wouldn't this be different from Buddhism's purpose? Then let's not create a Buddha who disregards the four elements. Let's create a victorious fighting Buddha, transmigration and rebirth. This setting was completely the model of a main character. Zhang Fugui. The Zhang Fugui who wanted to exchange a signboard for 1,000,000 spirit stones at the ferry of Seven Emotions Casino. Suddenly, Liu saw the second-generation immortal Zhang Fugui again. His eyes lit up. Very good, it's you. With a flick of his finger, the illusory power from the path of the Great Void silently entered Zhang Fugui's body. Ha. Today, I'll kill everyone. Zhang Fugui, who had just won a sum of money from the casino, looked up to the sky and laughed. Then, he missed a step and fell to the ground. Young master. A few of Zhang Fugui's attendants were so frightened that they screamed and hurriedly helped Zhang Fugui up. However, Zhang Fugui had lost all consciousness except for his breathing and heartbeat. He was completely unconscious. The followers were shocked. They hurriedly helped Zhang Fugui up and rushed home. At this moment, Zhang Fugui was experiencing 3 reincarnations. There was once a true love placed in front of me, but I didn't cherish it. When I lost it, it was too late for regrets. This is the most painful thing in the world. If the heavens could give me another chance, I would say 3 words to that girl. I love you. If I had to add a time limit to this love, I hope it will be 10,000 years. Joker, Zixia. Then, the scene in front of him changed to a modern city. Birth, study, graduation, heartbreak, until an accident. The scene changed to that of a cultivator clan in the territory of the Wandering Cultivator Alliance in the Yu Heaven. He became Zhang Fugui again. From his birth to his fall in front of the casino, then it continued to develop. Grandmaster Jean Dan's father died in a battle, and from then on, the family declined. The servants took the family property and fled. His former friends all treated him coldly. Because of the enemies he provoked, his sister, his only family, died together with the enemy in order to save him. In the difficult struggle to survive, Zhang Fugui finally passed away. So that's how it is. Zhang Fugui slowly opened his eyes. His eyes revealed endless vicissitudes, as if he had experienced hundreds of millions of years. His ears suddenly felt itchy. Zhang Fugui dug around and then took out a small purple goldenrod that looked like an embroidery needle. The words Rui Jingu Bang were engraved on it. The moment I saw it, I knew that my ordinary life was far away from me. In this life, Zhang Fugui clenched his fist tightly and held the Rui Jingu Bang. I want the heavens to no longer cover my eyes. I want the earth to no longer be able to bury my heart. I want all living beings to understand my intentions. I want all the gods and Buddhas to disappear. Chapter 1079. Fugue, how are you? At this moment, Zhang Fugue saw his father hurrying into the room. I told you to cultivate seriously, but you didn't listen. How could a cultivator in the Qi channeling stage fall? You have to cultivate seriously in the future. Yes, father, I understand. After awakening the memories of his previous life and seeing the scenes of the future, Zhang Fugue had completely woken up. I'm the great sage, heaven's equal. How could I be so miserable in this life? Zhang Fugue's father was stunned. Since when did this bastard become so obedient? Could it be that the fall had damaged his brain? But this is a good sign. It's good that you understand. Zhang Fugue's father nodded. Have a good rest. Take care of your body and cultivate seriously next. After a while, Zhang Fugue's father left the room. I will cultivate seriously. I will never let that future happen again. Taking a deep breath, Zhang Fugue opened his palm. Looking at the Rui Jingu Bang, which was the size of an embroidery needle, he smiled and said, Old buddy, long time no see. The Rui Jingu Bang in his palm made a buzzing sound as if it was responding to Zhang Fugue's words. The Jingu Bang is still here, but my victorious fighting Buddha, golden body, and heaven's equal true body are gone. Do I have to start all over again? Looking up at the sky, Zhang Fugue clenched his fist. So what if I start all over again? By cultivating the 8-9 arcane art and the victorious fighting Buddha original wish sutra, my true body and golden body could be cultivated again. Sitting cross-legged on the bed, Zhang Fugue began to cultivate according to the cultivation technique in his mind. Just as he calmed down, a huge Buddha appeared in his mind. The Buddha's light was vast and brilliant, as if it was the embodiment of all karma. In heaven and earth, only I am supreme. Tathagata, Zhang Fugue's heart was filled with rage. In an instant, his eyes turned red and flashed with golden flames. 500 years of suppression under the 5 Elements mountain. His journey to the west to obtain the scriptures. He had experienced life and death. But everything was a conspiracy. Everything was a scheme. Tathagata, you also came to this world? In this life, let's settle our old scores. He gritted his teeth so hard that they were making cracking noises. The Rui Jingu Bang in his hand suddenly burst out a streak of golden light and turned into a giant purple gold rod. In this life, I want all the gods and Buddhas to vanish. Slowly suppressing the anger in his heart, Zhang Fugue let out a long sigh. Karma Tao Ancestor, glazed Buddha Lord? You actually became a Buddha in this world? Have you asked for my opinion? Of course, the current Zhang Fugue was not the great sage, heaven's equal, nor was he the victorious fighting Buddha. He was only a little cultivator at the Qi channeling stage. Compared to the glazed Buddha, he was just a speck of dust. Cultivation. Hurry up and cultivate. There will be a day when I, old son, will overturn this world. We will definitely fight our way up to the spiritual mountain. After calming himself down, Zhang Fugue began to recultivate the arts of 8-9. The 9 revolutions of the mysterious art. 1 staff equals the heavens. I, old son, am back. All of you, just you wait. This is... Activating the arts of 8-9, Zhang Fugue suddenly sensed something. It was as if somewhere something was calling out to him. This is the true body of the great sage, heaven's equal, and the true body of the victorious fighting Buddha. Both of my true bodies are in this world. Ha. Good. Zhang Fugue suddenly stood up and rushed out of the room in a few steps, rushing in the direction he sensed. Sigh. Fugue. Seeing Zhang Fugue rush out of the house, Father Zhang sighed in his heart. Fugue is still the same as before. My child, when are you going to be sensible? The true body of the great sage, heaven's equal, is actually in Yu Tian. Thinking of the future he saw, the one who had not awakened and could not sense the existence of his true body. He was finally humiliated to death by a few cultivators who did not even have a gene Dan. It was simply at the border between the western wilderness and the southern wilderness, in the 100,000 mountains. My true body is right there. With the strength of the chi channeling stage, who knew how long it would take to fly such a long distance. However, I have the Jingu Bang. With a toss of his hand, the Rui Jingu Bang turned into a golden light and swept Zhang Fugui up, whistling through the air and flying towards the 100,000 mountains. Fugui. When did he have this ability? Father Zhang, who was worried about Zhang Fugui and wanted to follow behind to take care of him, suddenly saw Zhang Fugui riding a golden light and flying into the sky, disappearing in the blink of an eye. This speed, even Grandmaster Jean Dan can't achieve this. Fugui, Father Zhang was dumbfounded. Flying all the way, Zhang Fugui quickly arrived at his destination. It was a mountain, a huge stone mountain. The entire mountain looked a little like a giant ape squatting on the ground, roaring towards the sky. This is my true body. This is the great sage, heaven's equal. Feeling the call from the soul, Zhang Fugui trembled with excitement. I am here. Billions of years of waiting, billions of years of loneliness, billions of years of suffering. Today I am back. I, the great sage, heaven's equal, am back. Opening his arms, he raised the Jingu Bang high and roared towards the sky. I, old sun, am back. Boom! The mountain collapsed and the earth cracked. The earth quaked and the mountain shook. The enormous stone mountain exploded with a loud bang, revealing a ferocious ape that was over 10,000 feet tall. Its entire body flickered with golden light as it stood proudly. Its rigid spine was straight. Its unyielding head was held high. Violent, tyrannical, and boundless might. It did not believe in heaven, earth, gods, or Buddha. It was lawless. The moment this golden, violent ape appeared, Zhang Fugui's body involuntarily flew over. With a flash of golden light, Zhang Fugui's entire body merged into the violent ape's body. Roar! An angry roar shook the heavens and the earth. A violent and monstrous demonic aura soared into the sky. I, old sun, am back. A huge purple gold staff was raised high in the violent ape's hand, as if it was going to pierce through the void. Doomsday! Destruction! Destruction! Doomsday! At this moment, the entire world was shaking and trembling. It was as if the world had reached its end. Doomsday had arrived. Everything in the world would be destroyed. Tao fusing? Someone has fused with the Tao of Doomsday that represents the end of Doomsday? Who is this? Who is this? Countless great figures in the world leapt to their feet in shock at the sight of the heavens shaking and the aura of Doomsday that reduced everything to nothingness. A monkey? A monkey has fused with Tao. The torch dragon fused with Tao first. Now another monkey has fused with Tao. Could it be that brainless beasts are more suited to fusing with Tao? At this moment, those who were still half-step golden immortals and had yet to truly fuse with Tao began to doubt their very existence. The ancestral dragon, the penishade peacock, the phoenix, although these Tao ancestors were a little disrespectful, they were still primordial beasts that had achieved Tao. The torch dragon was also a primordial beast that had achieved Tao. Now this monkey was also a primordial beast that had achieved Tao. Then, could he consider reincarnating as a primordial beast? Chapter 1080. It's all an illusion. Liu laughed heartily. Who's the Tao integration? It's not Zhang Fugui or the great sage, heaven's equal, but the Chaos Essence Golden Chalice. Liu had sent the Chaos Essence Golden Chalice into a greater thousand world and tossed it around countless times. In the process of researching the birth of a greater thousand world, turning the Chaos Essence Golden Chalice into a monkey was as easy as moving a finger. Thus, Zhang Fugui's great sage, heaven's equal, was born. He added the great sage's memories into the newly created great sage, heaven's equals true body for Zhang Fugue to fuse with. Thus, I, old son, am back. This is a Tao integration golden immortal? Yes, I, old son, am a Tao integration golden immortal in this world. The golden raging ape stared at the sky with a pair of glittering golden eyes. He looked at the colored glass Buddhist land and breathed out heavily from his nostrils. My victorious fighting Buddha golden body is on Spirit Mountain? Tathagata, so you suppress my golden body on Spirit Mountain? Very good, very good. The golden-furred violent ape grinned, revealing rows of sharp fangs. A surge of violent energy shot up into the sky. In the colored glass great world, the colored glass Buddha, who was chanting with his eyes closed, suddenly felt his heart skip a beat. Why does Tao Ancestor Doomsday, who has just reached Tao integration, have karma with me? Amidst his astonishment, a loud rumble came from the sky. Tathagata, I, old son, am back. It's time for us to settle our old scores. With an earth-shattering roar, the golden raging ape swung his giant cudgel and smashed it down on the colored glass great world. The Rui Jingu cudgel grew bigger and bigger. In the end, it was even bigger than the colored glass great world. Doomsday was coming. The age of doom was coming. The gods and Buddhas were vanishing. This strike carried the power of the age of doom and the end of the world. Endless visions circulated above the giant cudgel. The great Tao was destroyed. The gods and Buddhas fell. Immortals fell. Tao, Dharma, Spirit Chi, mystiques, and dermic powers were no more. Everything had vanished into thin air. This was the end of the world, the arrival of the age of Dharma. This was the great Tao of doom. What's going on? Does this monkey have a grudge against the Buddha? When the monkey raised his cudgel and smashed it at the colored glaze great world, all the mighty figures in the heavens exchanged glances. It couldn't be, right? Even someone like the Buddha, who didn't care about anything and only focused on cultivation, had a grudge with someone? Furthermore, this monkey could speak. He's not a beast. Who is Tathagata? Who is I, old son? In this world, all Buddhas were Tathagata. All golden immortals of Buddhism were Tathagata. Ananda Tathagata, Mahavarakana, Amateus Tathagata, Ratnasambhava, they were all called Tathagata. Only the glazed Buddha was not called Tathagata. Instead, he was called Buddha, merciful Buddha. Although the Buddha Lord was confused, he could only block the attack. A Vairocana Buddha light rippled out like water, protecting the Vairocana great world and blocking the attack of the arrival of the age of Dharma. Above the golden immortal Tao ancestor was the creation realm. There were 5 great creations in this world. Taoism's Yujing, Tai Su, and Tai Xian. Buddhism's glazed Buddha and Nirvana Buddha. These 5 were the most powerful beings in the heavens. Therefore, although the great sage, heaven's equals cudgel had the strength of a Tao integration golden immortal, it still couldn't shake the Vairocana Buddha light. Merciful Buddha! The Buddha Lord put his palms together and stood up with a benevolent expression. He smiled at the great sage, heaven's equal. Tao Ancestor Doomsday, what karma do you have with this old monk? The great Tao of karma of the heavens was the Buddha Lord. However, there was a karma here that even he didn't know about. This was too strange. It was too horrifying. Not only was the Buddha Lord shocked, but the countless Buddhist disciples in the colored glazed great world were also stunned. The mighty figures in the heavens who were watching this scene were also stunned. There was a karma in this world that even the Buddha Lord didn't know about. Didn't this shake the foundation of the Buddha Lord's existence? Karma? Ha ha! Tathagata, even the waters of the 4 seas can't wash away the hatred between us. The golden raging ape raised his cudgel and pointed it at the Buddha Lord. Back then, you suppressed me under the 5-finger mountain. Back then, you tricked me into escorting the golden cicada master to the west in search of scriptures, causing me and Zixia to never meet again. Our hatred is as deep as the ocean. Roaring furiously, the golden ferocious ape once again raised its big club and smashed down fiercely. This old monk. Why can't I understand a single word? The Buddha Lord blinked, completely clueless about what the monkey was talking about. After blocking the monkey's attack, the Buddha Lord turned to look at the Buddha of sandalwood merit. Golden Cicada Master, do you know what he's talking about? Master, I don't understand either. What did I go to the West in search of scriptures? Even if I wanted to, I didn't need him to escort me. The Golden Cicada Master rubbed his bald head in a daze. The Buddha Lord was also stunned. This old monk is already at the creation realm. All the karma in the world is in my hands. I can see the past and the future with a single glance. Why can't I figure out my karma with this monkey? It seems like the opportunity for this old monk to attain eternity lies with this monkey. The karma that isn't controlled by the master of karma, the elusive one. Then I'll have to borrow this monkey's hands to study it. The Buddha sat down with a smile on his face. No matter how much the monkey yelled, he ignored him. He only used the Buddha light to block the monkey's attack. Then, the great lazuli world was blocked by the monkey. For a moment, all the worlds were speechless. How terrifying was this monkey's background? Even the great lazuli world was blocked by him. But the Buddha Lord couldn't do anything to him. Therefore, all the mighty figures had already labeled the monkey as someone not to be trifled with. If even the creation realm mighty figures didn't dare to touch him, they naturally couldn't afford to offend him. Just as I expected, Liu nodded with a smile. When the Buddha Lord discovered a karma that wasn't under his control, he would definitely study it seriously and figure out the ins and outs. He wouldn't attack the monkey so easily. Instead, he would borrow the monkey's hands to find the root cause. This suited Liu's needs. If you want to study it, so do I. For a karma that wasn't controlled by the master of karma, the Buddha Lord had to deduce his own great way of karma from the beginning to the end. Liu only needed to watch. The principles of karma was the root of all karma. Through the monitoring on the monkey, he could observe the Buddha Lord's method and verify his own principles of karma. Then, he would naturally be able to grasp the way of karma in this world. So, you guys can slowly play the game of love and hate. Liu smiled and waved his hand. He had achieved his goal. As for whether the monkey overturned the spirit mountain, was suppressed under the Five Fingers Mountain again, or became the victorious fighting Buddha again, that was their own business. Cheating others was that simple. Chapter 1081. After becoming a deva, I'll have to pass the deva's 5 signs of decay. To Liu, letting his avatar reach Tao integration in this world would allow him to reap the 3,000 great Tao of this world and finally complete his own chaos and disorder. This was the key goal. Cheating others was also for research purposes. However, the final harvest still depended on himself. The deva's 5 signs of decay. The decline of the physical body, the decline of dharmic powers, the decline of the essence soul, the decline of the lifespan, and the decline of the Tao heart. Every deva tribulation is both a form of training and a life and death crisis. Of course, to Liu, the deva's 5 signs of decay could be completely ignored. His avatar and main body were one. What kind of deva tribulation could cause Liu's physical body, dharmic powers, essence soul, lifespan, and Tao heart to the point of facing death? But Tao integration is somewhat troublesome. This world never had the 2 great Taos of matter and order. In essence, matter and order contained all 3,000 great Tao. Therefore, to combine 3,000 great Tao at the same time was rather terrifying. Let's see how Old Peacock's research is going. In this world, Old Peacock's 5 elements represent the existence of all things. He should be able to evolve heaven and earth and summarize the matter great Tao. A golden immortal Tao ancestor had been researching for many years. His insights should be able to give Liu some benefits and give his avatar some inspiration for Tao integration. With that thought, Liu's avatar stepped out and broke through the void to rush to the 5 elements great world. Although he could communicate with old Peacock through the talisman, it was better to see than to hear 100 times. Now that he had seen it with his own eyes, everything became clear. Through the void passageway, Liu quickly arrived at the Five Elements' great world. Liu, who had just come out of the spatial passageway, suddenly saw a cultivator walk up to him and say mysteriously, "Fellow Taoist, have you heard of Amway?" Uft. Liu burst out laughing. F***CK. You're playing a pyramid scheme on me? What's more important is, little sister Kong Fong, can you change your name? Must you be called Amway? Fellow Taoist, why are you so happy? You should be happy. This is a peerless opportunity. Fellow Taoist, your chance to make a fortune has come. Do you want to have an endless supply of spirit stones? Do you want to possess countless magical treasures? Do you want to have an endless supply of heavenly treasures? In fact, as long as you are willing to do it, you might even have a chance to obtain a connate numinous treasure. Come on, join our team. The great Tao is right in front of us. The path to immortality is right in front of us. Sorry, I's Taoist name is Only. Liu let out 3 loud laughs, rode on a beam of light, and soared into the sky, disappearing in an instant. Only a dumbfounded Taoist was left behind. Taoist name Only? This fellow Taoist name is really interesting. A moment later, Liu's figure appeared in the Five Elements Hall of the Five Elements Tao ancestor. Greetings, Master. Seeing Liu arrive, Kong Ji hurriedly bowed in greeting. At this moment, the light emitted from the old peacock's body was no longer of the 5 elements and colors. Instead, it had turned into a ball of yellow light. The fusion of the 5 elements into the mysterious yellow chi. Not bad. You can be considered to have succeeded in your cultivation. Seeing the mysterious yellow light on the old peacock's body, Liu nodded. Although it was still far from the origin of matter, that his myriad chi had advanced to origin of matter. However, it could still be considered the mother of all of this world. The mother of all of this world was still far from Liu's origin of matter, of all worlds and space-time. Disciple has a deep understanding of the great Tao that Master has passed down. Disciple's 5-color divine light brushes through everything. It originally represented all things. Advancing to myriad chi is also a matter of course. The old peacock bowed in greeting. Master's great Tao of matter is indeed the root of heaven and earth, the foundation of the great Tao. Disciple has benefited greatly. I am very comforted that you can have such an understanding. Liu smiled and nodded, waving at the old peacock. Come, let Master see your great Tao of matter. Yes. The old peacock hurriedly walked forward and bowed, allowing Liu to reach out and press his head. Tricking a disciple out makes things much easier. Liu smiled and scanned the old peacock's cultivation insights and the myriad chi that he had cultivated. Not bad. Releasing his hand, Liu smiled and nodded. Your understanding of the great Tao of matter is correct. With the old peacock as a lab rat personally verifying it, Liu had already completed a large portion of the foundation of Tao convergence in this world. There were basically no problems with the great Tao of matter. Thank you for passing down the great Tao to me, Master. The old peacock was also very happy with the great Tao that had advanced from the 5 elements to the myriad chi. He was even more grateful to Liu. In his opinion, this was clearly tailor-made for him by his master. Nothing is the beginning of heaven and earth. Existence is the mother of all things. Liu turned to look at Kong Ji. Now that you have cultivated the myriad chi, you are already at the level of existence. If you take another step forward, you will be at the level of nothing. Do you have any ideas? There are many connate Taos that are the opposite of my great Tao. Nirvana, doomsday destruction, and void, they're all very suitable. The old peacock looked up at Liu and hesitated. I feel that the Tao of void is more suitable. However, Tao Ancestor Great Void is Yu Jing's disciple. I still can't make up my mind. The immortal extermination sword formation is about to attain eternity. When that happens, Yu Jing will take Great Void away. The connate Great Void Tao will be empty. Liu casually revealed the heavenly secret. Thank you for your guidance, Master. The old peacock also felt that Yu Jing was about to attain eternity. He had thought so too. Now that he heard Li Yu's words, he naturally believed it. Liu nodded and waved his hand. A formless and ethereal light spot fell into the old peacock's consciousness. This is the Khanate Great Void Tao. Comprehend it seriously and prepare yourself. Just wait for the opportunity to attain Tao. From the extreme universe cauldron, Liu had already absorbed the aura of the Great Void Mirror and completely analyzed the Khanate Great Void Tao. Since the old peacock had done well as a lab rat, he naturally had to reward him. Thank you, Master. All these years, the old peacock had been thinking of ways to comprehend the Great Void Tao. Although he had some gains, how could they compare to the complete Great Void Tao? Cultivate on your own. I'll take a walk around. With a wave of his hand, Liu turned and left the old peacock's 5 elements palace. After all these years of torment, I've finally reaped some benefits from the old peacock. The material Great Tao was basically formed. However, there was still a gap between the Order Great Tao. Riding on a streak of light, Liu tore through the air and quickly left the 5 elements great world. Next, I need to find a place to survive the 5 decay of heaven and man. Then, I'll fuse the great Tao that my main body comprehended in the primordial world and attain Tao unification. Tao unification was not the goal. The goal was to come into contact with the 3,000 great Taos of this world. With the 3,000 great Tao in hand, he would fuse them into his own system and finally perfect chaos and disorder. Chapter 1082. Let's go to the Cave of Time. With a thought, Liu triggered Torch Dragon's power of time. In the blink of an eye, he crossed the endless distance and arrived at the Cave of Time. Even though Torch Dragon was a Beast Tao ancestor, it still had its original habits and stayed in the Cave of Time. It had no intention of opening up a world or ruling a world. As for accepting disciples, did a beast need disciples? Would it accept disciples or food? Roar, roar. When Liu stepped into the Cave of Time, Torch Dragon intimately leaned over and nodded at Liu. All right, Time Tao Ancestor is the only one who can be a mount. With a smile, he stepped on Torch Dragon's head and patted its horn, indicating for it to move forward. In front of Time, no matter how far the distance was, it was only an instant. He had not had time to enjoy being a mount. He had just reached the top of Torch Dragon's head and was about to come down again. You're a little useful. The Great Tao of Time was Torch Dragon, and Torch Dragon belonged to Liu. Therefore, his main body could play the fast-forward game in that initial world without any scruples. He had played with that world from birth to destruction, and from destruction to birth countless times. My main body is studying the world over there and has a deep understanding of the 3,000 great Taos of that world. Although the 3,000 great Taos of that world are only branches of the 3,000 great Taos of the Void Universe, it should be enough for me to reach Tao integration. The most important thing was naturally to pass the 5 decay of the celestial being. The first decay of the celestial being, the decay of the physical body. In the depths of the Cave of Time, Liu found a cliff and sat down cross-legged. Then, he began to trigger the celestial being blight. From the previous 49 heavenly tribulations, Liu had also studied the Tao of calamity. With the aura of calamity, the 5 decay of the celestial being would descend. Decay, decay. The test given by the Great Tao laws to cultivators was born from the Great Tao. Liu wasn't able to devour the power of the Grand Tao laws in one gulp like last time. In just a few moments, Liu's body became old and decrepit, his entire body in tatters. His blood essence had dried up, and his qi and blood had declined. He was like a corpse that was about to decay. In the end, it's just a fleshly body of this world. It's still affected by the Grand Tao laws. The withered and decayed clone shook his head with a smile. But this clone of mine has also reached the realm of being reborn from a single drop of blood. With a single thought, a strand of boundless vitality gushed out with a bang. It was like a withered tree coming back to life, and his withered and decayed body instantly recovered its vitality. Decay. Recover. Right again. Recover again. They were locked in a stalemate like this, constantly consuming their vitality and resisting the test of the great Tao. This continued until the power of the great Tao dissipated, and the power of decay and decay dissipated without a trace. The first Deva's blight had officially passed. When the power of the decay of the great Tao intertwines with one's life force, that is when one imprints the laws of the great Tao into one's body. Once he overcame it, his strength would increase tremendously. If you can't, you'll die and your Tao will vanish. After experiencing it personally, Liu also had a deeper understanding of this Deva's 5 decay. The second heaven's blight's magic power blight is quite simple. Even if the original body didn't interfere, there was still Pan Yu and the Dark Celestial Emperor in the resource vault. As long as a bit of power was transmitted over, would the magic power decline be able to deplete the magic power of these two fellows? Of course, this was cheating. With this clone's magic power, there was no problem for it to pass the magic power blight. With the great Tao of matter in his body, matter was energy. He had endless magic power, and he could exhaust it as he pleased. After easily passing the first heaven's blight and imprinting the laws of the great Tao into his magic power, the essence of his magic power had been greatly improved. The third heaven's blight, the origin soul blight. Okay, the soul of the original body and the avatar are one. Your heavenly Tao can exhaust the original body's soul. The clone Liu simply didn't resist and allowed the laws of the great Tao to exhaust his soul. In addition to Liu's powerful soul, there was another spell to be mentioned here, the flowing ink soul split spell. The ancient clan's soul secret spell from Wang Lin's world had one biggest characteristic. It could split into billions of souls, but each soul had the same soul power as the original body. That's why the strongest part of Liu's avatar was its soul. Having the same soul power as the original body was simply terrifying. The power of the laws of the great Tao's blight only consumed a small portion of the soul power to allow Liu to easily pass the third heaven's blight. The fourth heaven's blight, life blight. Even though it was just a clone, something like lifespan was still a part of the original. As long as the original body wasn't destroyed, the avatar wouldn't be destroyed. Liu's lifespan. Does he still have lifespan? He could control the river of time at will. So life didn't exist on Liu's body at all. As a result, the life blight flashed on Liu's body and disappeared. If the life blight was a person, it would be cursing, bastard my, what is an eternal existence with endless life going through the life blight. The fifth heaven's blight, Tao Heart's blight. Tao Heart. For Liu, his Tao Heart was already a Tao fruit. Unspeakable, unfathomable, unknowable, unthinkable. One guess was wrong, and one thought was wrong. Even if you were to die, you wouldn't die. The 5 heavens blights were all passed in the blink of an eye. The clouds were light and the wind was light, without any ripples. The life of a cheat was awesome. After passing the heavens blight, I'm already a half-step golden immortal. The rest is to prepare for Tao unification. The great Tao was ethereal and unpredictable. Only when one reached Tao unification would they know what Tao unification was. There were still a few major difficulties. The biggest test was the outer Tao derivation. The experiences of the predecessors were placed in front of you. Those were completely correct experiences. Those were absolutely correct experiences. It seemed that if you followed this experience, you could immediately reach Tao unification. However, this was all wrong. The great Tao was only in yourself. The correct method of others' Tao validation was absolutely wrong for you. For example, for Taoist Yujing, the 4 immortal slaying swords killed everything. This was the great Tao. However, for Tao Ancestor Zenith Heaven, the great Tao was to add merit to the body and save the common people. Different people had different Taos. Of course, I still need a lot of time to reach Tao unification. After receiving the great Tao insights from the main body, Liu's clone sat down cross-legged and integrated the true meaning of the great Tao that the main body had studied in the primordial world into himself. Order and law, matter and energy. It contains everything in a world. The purpose of my Tao unification is to obtain the 3,000 great Tao of this world. However, who has heard of someone combining 3,000 great Tao at once? The great Tao could not be comprehended. The rules of this world were like that. Only when one was at Tao unification could one completely come into contact with the great Tao. Moreover, whatever Tao you combined, you would come into contact with that Tao. It wasn't difficult to fuse a single Tao or even hundreds of Taos. To combine all 3,000 great Tao at once, that was simply a joke. Chapter 1083. 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years. Unknowingly, he had already been in this world for more than 100 years. However, Liu, who was in seclusion in the Cave of Time, still couldn't find any clues. Was there any way to fuse 3,000 great Taos at once? 100 years have already passed. I don't have any more time to waste here. Fusing 3,000 great Taos at once. No one can do it. Could it be that all the plans for this transmigration failed because of this? This world is very important. It has a complete set of 3,000 great Taos. Obtaining the great Tao nomological laws of this world is very valuable for my future cultivation. I have to obtain all 3,000 great Taos. There aren't many worlds like this with complete nomological laws in the universe. If I can't obtain the 3,000 great Taos this time, it will be a huge loss for me. Although I can come to this world again, as long as I follow the system on Dubai, I can descend to this world again. However, I don't have much time left. If I can't complete it this time, there might not be a next time. Damn it, where's the opportunity? Sitting cross-legged in the Cave of Time, Liu's hair almost turned white from worry. His soul was one. His avatar was thinking of a way, and so was his main body. Moreover, he had released billions of avatars to think of a way together. Only those who have personally fused with the Tao know how difficult it is. I created the Torch Dragon and the Great Sage, Heaven's equal. They made me feel that fusing with the Tao was as easy as drinking water. Actually, I took it for granted. Was he arrogant? Rampaging through all the worlds and sweeping through the world unstoppably made him think that he was infallible? Indeed, the biggest obstacle to cultivation was himself. After letting out a long breath, Liu raised his head and looked at the endless void. His avatar and main body exchanged glances and shook their heads with bitter smiles. I was indeed too arrogant and conceited. I took it for granted that I could create miracles and fuse with 3,000 great Taos alone. I always thought that I was above heaven and earth. You don't know that for countless years in this world, countless cultivators have been thinking about the path of cultivation. It's impossible that no one has ever wanted to fuse with 3,000 great Taos. It's obvious that this path won't succeed. Therefore, no one took this path. Fusing with 3,000 great Taos is a dead end. No one could do it. This transmigration could only end in failure. Human? Lee suddenly had a thought. If even a human couldn't do it, then what about an inhuman? As soon as this thought was born, everything suddenly became clear. Why did it have to be a human? Even a beast like Torch Dragon could achieve Tao integration. Connate numinous treasures could also achieve Tao integration. None of them were humans. Since a person could not fuse 3,000 grand Taos at once, then he had to find something that could. I see. The main body and the clone looked at each other and laughed heartily. Come on, the opportunity for the Tao integration stage is right here. The main body reached out and grabbed the doppelganger Liu. I've guarded this primordial world for countless years, and only now do I understand that the opportunity is right before my eyes. What could fuse 3,000 great Taos at once? Of course it is a world. The doppelganger Liu laughed heartily. The method of establishing a world that I obtained in Luo Feng's world, Pan Shi's method of establishing a world, isn't it precisely used here? A beam of light shot into the sky. The doppelganger Liu transformed into a beam of light and charged into the primordial world in front of him. Boom! There was an earth-shattering explosion, and heaven and earth were split open. When the chaos first opened, yin and yang appeared, and heaven and earth, black and yellow, were born together. At this moment, the primordial world that Li Yu had tormented countless times was finally free. It had been completely tormented by Li Yu. I've always hated the self-aware heavenly Tao. I didn't expect that today I would also become the heavenly Tao of a world. With a self-deprecating laugh, the doppelganger Li Yu, who had transformed into a world, took advantage of the moment when heaven and earth first opened and the 3,000 great Taos of the void universe extended over, officially taking the first step of Tao integration. Boom! At this moment, the entire void universe shook violently. Heaven and earth resonated, and the great Taos resonated. A beam of light shone brightly. Endless light illuminated every corner of the void universe in an instant. Whether it was the chaotic chaos of earth, water, fire, and wind, or the great world that the masters of creation had created, even the minor kiliocosms and grotto heavens were all enveloped by this array of light. This was the light of great Tao, the light of great Tao that resonated with the 3,000 great Taos. What's going on? Seeing this phenomenon, all the living beings in the universe, from the masters of creation to the insects, fish, birds, and beasts, all looked up in shock. They all looked at this light of great Tao. 3,000 great Tao resonating? What's going on? Others couldn't understand the situation, but the masters of creation in this world could. This was the resonance of the 3,000 great Taos of the void universe, responding to a certain existence. However, was there such an existence in a void universe? 3,000 great Tao resonating. This should be the phenomenon of proving eternity. But the five of us masters of creation haven't proven eternity. So who is proving eternity? Proving eternity is a phenomenon of 3,000 great Tao resonating. But that's just a phenomenon. The current situation clearly shows that the 3,000 great Tao are really resonating. It looks very much like Tao integration, but 3,000 great Tao resonating. Could someone have combined all 3,000 great Tao at the same time? That's impossible. The five masters of creation communicated with each other through divine consciousness, but none of them could make sense of the situation. If even the masters of creation couldn't make sense of the situation, the others were even more confused. Boom! Another earth-shattering explosion sounded. In the brilliant light of great Tao, a newly created world slowly emerged. The light of great Tao surged, and the 3,000 great Tao laws intertwined and evolved in this world like threads of silk. The Khanate 5 manifestations. The Khanate 5 virtues. The 5 elements and 5 luck. Karma nirvana, life and death reincarnation. Endless Tao laws evolved in this world. A world? A world resonating with great Tao? What's going on? At this moment, everyone in the void universe stared dumbfounded at the world that was intertwining with great Tao. 3,000 great Tao in my hands, 2 great origins cast my body. Amidst the endless light of the great path, a mighty song rang out. The world that was resonating with great Tao kept shrinking and condensing. Suddenly, actually transformed into a youth in fluttering white robes. A world turned into a person? The origin of a world? This thing, doesn't it have no consciousness? It can also achieve Tao. This time, the 5 masters of creation were all stunned. Was this still the world they were familiar with? It was one thing for a wild beast like the torch dragon to achieve Tao, but how could a freaking world achieve Tao? Was there no justice in this world? The people from Penglai and Yingzhou were stunned. It can't be, right? You have such a background? Yu Xiao's jaw almost dropped. Master, you succeeded? You created a new, great Tao for this world? A world? Yes, didn't matter in order form a world. Old Peacock bowed with a face full of joy. At the beginning of chaos, yin and yang appeared, and heaven and earth, black and yellow, were born together. The 3,000 great Taos merged with creation, and the origins converged to become eternal. The long song lingered in the air. The figure in fluttering white robes stepped on the light of great Tao and stood with his hands behind his back. The transcendent figure seemed to be the origin of the 3,000 great Tao, the supreme ruler of all worlds. Chapter 1084. I shall open another great Tao in this world. With a wave of his hand, a cluster of chaos clouds appeared in the void. The chaos was disorderly, and the 3,000 great Tao did not appear. Nothing is the beginning of the world. Yes, the mother of all things. Yin and yang appeared at the beginning of the chaos, and the heaven, earth, black, and yellow were born together. A taiji yin-yang fish with black and white intertwined appeared. Yin and yang split. The 5 elements rotated, and the 8 trigrams were born. The 3,000 great Tao appeared here. This is the Tao of order. The 3,000 great Tao, all living beings, karma, fate, life, and death. Everything is order. Everything belongs to order. Li performed the Dharma in the void. The light of the great Tao was dazzling as the world resonated. Instantly, the aura of the 5 virtues scattered down like lotus flowers and pearls, filling the sky with a rain of light. It was dreamy, sacred, and glorious. 5 virtues descending from the heavens. This Tao of order is actually such a profound, great Tao, true Dharma. Upon seeing this scene, countless people in the various worlds were dumbfounded. Such a powerful, great Tao can only be cultivated by the world's origins. Are we going to reincarnate into a world? It's fine if we reincarnate as a primordial beast, but how do we reincarnate into a world? However, the golden immortals and the Lord of creation felt different. I see. Attaining creation, attaining eternity, and the 3,000 great Tao returning to oneself. This is a Tao of eternity. The Lord of creation used the 2 connate great Taos that he had fused as a foundation to evolve the 3,000 great Tao and open up a world. Ultimately, he had to sever the 2 connate great Taos that he had fused to attain eternity. At that moment, the golden immortals and the Lord of creation were enlightened when they saw Li Yu perform the Dharma. The karma is over. It's time to leave. His main body and avatar fused as one. Li Yu turned to look in the direction of the whole of time. With a flick of his sleeve, he kept Torch Dragon. He looked into the void and greeted Old Peacock, Yu Xiao, and the other acquaintances. I shall take my leave. With a slight tap of his feet, the light of the great Tao transformed into a huge lotus platform that lifted Li Yu up and floated out of the world. Thank you, Senior, for your Dharma. Senior, please bestow me a name. The 5 masters of creation were stuck at the crucial point of proving eternity. After witnessing Li Yu's demonstration with their own eyes, they were deeply enlightened and were extremely grateful for Li Yu's guidance. At the beginning of the primordial chaos, yin and yang appeared, and heaven and earth, black and yellow, were born together. The long song lingered in the air as the figure ascended on the light of the great Tao instantly vanished. Yin and yang? Xian Huang. Could this person be great scarlet heaven's Tao, ancestor dark yellow? The masters of creation were all dumbfounded. After attaining eternity and transcending the heavens and earth, could he still return? Ha ha, the Tao of time is mine. At this moment, ancestral Gragon laughed maniacally. Torch Dragon, this fellow who has fused with the Tao of time, has been taken away by Tao Ancestor Black Yellow. The Tao of time has become empty again. This is the opportunity for this old man to fuse with the Tao. Then boom, A vast and mighty river of time rushed out from the cave of time. A huge bell rippled in the river of time, creating ripples that filled the sky. Clang! A bell chime resounded through the heavens and earth, shaking the heavens and resonating with the great Tao. When a protocosmic spirit treasure was born, the cosmic light bell suddenly conformed to the Tao of time. IF*CK. Ancestral Gragon was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of old blood. I've waited so long for the Tao of time to become empty, but it's snatched away again. Tathagata. It's time for us to settle our old scores. The golden-haired ape swung his club at the colored glass great world again. Benefactor, what old scores do we have? Colored glass Buddha shook his head gloomily. I like to see what kind of karma we have. He put his palms together and pressed down with his palm. Five-finger mountain. The monkey shrieked and swung his stick at the five fingers mountain. Bam! 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 After a series of fierce smashes, colored glass Buddha's palm bled. But that was all there was to it. The bleeding palm pressed down and imprisoned the golden-haired ape in his palm. Colored glass Buddha's mouth twitched in pain. Benefactor, please don't be angry. This old monk just wants to see what kind of karma we have. He pointed with his finger, and it was like an empty dream. Everything was like a dream, an illusion, a bubble, and a shadow. It was like dew and lightning. It should be observed as such. Under this finger, the memories of the golden-haired violent ape were all revealed in the illusion. Panga split open the sky. Nuwa mended the sky. Was this monkey transformed from stone refined by Nuwa to mend the sky? 3 pure ones and 2 Buddhas? Tathagata, wreaking havoc in heaven? Tang Sanzang seeking the scriptures? After reading the monkey's memories from beginning to end, Colored Glass Buddha was dumbfounded. Everything in a monkey's memories has a foundation, a cause, and an effect. It has to be real. But who is Pangu? Who is Nuwa? Who are the 3 pure ones and 2 Buddhas? And this old monk, Tathagata, and Golden Cicada, Tang Sanzang, have never done these things? Wait. Grand Supreme, Primeval, and Tong Tian? 4 immortal slaying swords? Heaven and Earth mystic yellow pagoda? All of a sudden, the Buddha realized that everything in the monkey's memory was vaguely matching the current situation. Tao Ancestor Black-Yellow of Daki Heaven, Primeval Tao Ancestor of Qingwei Heaven, and Yu Yutian Numinous Treasure Tao Ancestor. Weren't they the so-called 3 pure ones? Taoist Yujing's 4 immortal vanquishing swords were clearly the heavenly lord of numinous treasure's immortal vanquishing sword array. Tao Ancestor Zenith Heaven's true form was the heaven-earth dark yellow exquisite pagoda. Wasn't that Grand Supreme Elderly Lord's Dharma treasure? This old monk does have the 5-finger mountain's divine power, and I do have a disciple called Golden Cicada. It seems all of this has something to do with the monkey's memories, but it doesn't seem right. Colored Glass Buddha touched his bald head, feeling puzzled. Seems right, but doesn't seem right. What's going on? Sigh. Tao Ancestor Black-Yellow of Daki Heaven just left. Otherwise, I would definitely get an answer from him. Unfortunately, Colored Glass Buddha was shocked. Pangu split open the sky. Didn't Tao Ancestor Black-Yellow demonstrate? Pangu split open the sky. Colored Glass Buddha immediately thought of something. Could this void universe also be a world created by Pangu? Yes. Heaven and earth will eventually be destroyed. The primordial world in the monkey's memories must have already been destroyed. Then, another Pangu reopened heaven and earth. This allowed us, the original existences, to be reborn in this heaven and earth. Heaven and earth were destroyed, and all life was destroyed. Therefore, even if we were revived, we would lose the memories of the previous epoch. But why did the monkey retain the memories of the previous epoch? Yes. In the monkey's memories, he had been refined by Tao Ancestor Black-Yellow. Oh, Grand Supreme Elderly Lord for 49 days in a cauldron. He had cultivated the fiery golden eyes, the the mystic art, 9 transformations, and the indestructible body. Then, Tao Ancestor Black Yellow returned. Presumably, the monkey's memories were preserved by Tao Ancestor Black Yellow. But why was that? Grand Supreme Tao Ancestor's actions must have a deeper meaning. What was the meaning behind it? The monkey was originally my victorious fighting Buddha. Then, if he was suppressed for another 500 years, would he be able to obtain the scriptures again? Buddha is merciful. This old monk will spread the Dharma and save all life. Color Glass Buddha felt that he had understood Grand Supreme Tao Ancestor's meaning and planned to do a journey to the West. Li Yu said, "You're thinking too much. I'm just teasing you." Chapter 1085. Finally, I've won at the last moment. Using the world opening technique, he transformed into a world and obtained the 3,000 Great Taos. Li Yu was overjoyed by his gains this time. The 3,000 Great Taos could be said to be the most complete Great Tao laws in the universe. The laws were order. By incorporating these orders into himself, the origin of order had been greatly perfected. More importantly, the disorder of chaos was finally completed. From now on, Liu could control all the laws within the 3,000 Great Taos at will. He could annihilate them at will and turn all order into disorder. I've finally taken the most crucial step, chaos and disorder. This was a huge leap in Li Yu's path of cultivation. His origin of order could already go from being to nothingness and turn into chaos. The origin of matter and origin of order were the foundation of Li Yu's cultivation. The origin of order had been sublimated into disorder of chaos. He was already halfway to achieving disorder of chaos. Next, the origin of matter will turn into disorder of nothingness. This is more troublesome. It was not difficult to turn matter of annihilation into disorder of chaos. It was even simpler than disorder of chaos. Just a great 5 elements magnetic annihilation light could turn all things into nothingness and chaos. But Li Yu is also one of the all things. He couldn't possibly kill himself with a great 5 elements magnetic annihilation light, could he? I'll definitely not do something like killing myself at the end of my cultivation. Li Yu shook his head. So, the more I cultivate, the more difficult it is. Buddhism has the saying of no person, no self, no beings. But that's just the kind of cultivation of the mind. It's not turning oneself into nothingness. However, according to Li Yu's cultivation path, he had to turn all existences into nothingness at the end. Even he could not exist. Only then would it be called disorder of nothingness. It was extremely difficult to maintain oneself and turn into nothingness at the same time. Next, I'll need another round of more extensive experiments and research. Li Yu shook his head with a smile. I feel like I'm bringing disaster to the world. Stepping out of the immortal abode space in front of him was still the same. All the women in the divine residence were practicing. Even Bai Yin, the insect queen who had just arrived, chose a technique from the library and began practicing it. You guys go about your business. I have my own matters to attend to. Stepping out of the immortal mansion space, Li Yu arrived at the main hall on top of the immortal mountain on South Parting Island. Dragon's son Basya, who was carrying the main hall, was still sleeping on the ground. However, Dragon's son Basya's cultivation had finally caught up. He had reached the immortal king realm. At least he's diligent. Li Yu nodded and ignored Basya. He didn't alert the immortal kings of the undying mountain either. He took a step forward and left South Parting Island. I've already mastered the disorder of primal chaos. Compared to the celestial venerables of the origin world, my strength is one realm higher. With my current strength, I should be able to investigate more secrets. Looking up at the void, Li Yu used the power of the laws of the 3,000 Great Taos to sense the laws of heaven and earth of the origin world. From there, he could investigate the information of the origin world's celestial venerables and him. However, what's going on? I can't sense the laws of heaven and earth of the origin world. How is this possible? At that moment, Liu turned pale with fright. With the 3,000 great Daos in his grasp, the laws of heaven and earth of any world would definitely be related to the 3,000 great Daos. Even if there wasn't the complete 3,000 great Daos, there would definitely be a part of them. More importantly, metal, wood, water, fire, earth, light, darkness, wind, lightning, space-time, these basic laws absolutely had to exist. However, Liu couldn't sense the existence of any laws of the origin world at all. What's going on? What's going on here? A place without the laws of heaven and earth would only have primal chaos. However, this origin world was definitely not primal chaos. A world without the laws of heaven and earth. This was illogical. That's right. Previously, when I was constantly collecting the laws of heaven and earth of all worlds, the origin world was right in front of me. Why did I never think of going to the origin world to collect the laws of heaven and earth? At this moment, Liu is already drenched in a cold sweat. Someone unknowingly affected my mind. There's actually someone who can do such a thing. Dense fog, unfathomable danger. The origin world, what secret is it hiding? It's definitely not a coincidence that I transmigrated to the origin world. It's also definitely not a coincidence that the system attached to my body. Could it be that there's really someone behind the scenes manipulating everything? Liu stretched out his hand to press the profound yellow sword at his waist and took a deep breath. I want to see who's behind this. At this moment, Liu had already noticed the abnormality of not collecting the laws of heaven and earth of the origin world. This meant that the person behind this had no effect on Liu, who had cultivated the chaotic and disorderly world. Since you're no longer able to affect me, that means your strength isn't stronger than mine. At most, we're on the same level. Slowly pulling out the profound yellow sword, Liu's gaze was ice cold. Then let's fight. Hot blood surged in his heart. Raging flames surged, and his fighting spirit burned. Presumably, this person is related to the him that those Empyreans spoke of. It's very likely that they are the same person. If I want to fight, I naturally have to find him first. With a flash, Liu's figure soared into the sky, straight into the clouds. Since there are no laws of heaven and earth here, then I am the laws. With a clap of his hand, the primal chaos opened. Yin and Yang evolved, the 3,000 great Daos, and the myriad laws transformed into an earth-shattering Taiji 8 trigrams diagram. Endless radiance swept up, and the great Tao laws interweaved like a huge net, running through the entire origin world. The southern heaven region, the central region, the Jiangzhou region, the Yuan region, a total of 36 regions. Liu's own power of laws completely ran through the 36 regions of the origin world. Everything was under Liu's control. After that, Liu also discovered a few Empyreans who were hiding. 5 Empyreans were carefully superimposing countless layers of concealment arrays, hiding in secret places. When the great Tao laws swept through the world, these hidden Empyreans were instantly exposed to the great Tao laws. As long as they still existed in this world, as long as they hadn't transcended, then everything was under the control of the great Tao laws. Liu saw those Empyreans. Those Empyreans also saw him. He woke up. Isn't there still a few more years? Why is it so fast? Why'd he wake up early? It's over. It's over. We're dead for sure. The 5 hiding Empyreans saw Liu's figure and let out a horrified scream. Liu was startled, and then he instantly understood. You misunderstood. I'm not. Before he finished speaking, the 5 Empyreans let out miserable screams. One by one, they turned into blood and disappeared without a trace. Damn it! Who is it? Who did it? Seeing this scene, Liu roared in shock and anger. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.